Good morning. I was looking directly at you guys when I said that too. Yep. Good morning. Welcome to the 2023 Spring Financial Workshop. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could please rise and put your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I just wanted to mention really quick that there's going to be an afternoon recess from 11 to 1:45 p.m. So at 11 o'clock, we will, for lack of a better term, go off the air and come back at 1:45. And so we're going to get going now. And Mr. Ellis, did you have any comments that you'd like to start with?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, I'll be very brief. First of all, I wanted to thank Council for taking the time out of your days to be here. I know that this is an all-day event, and I know that you're all busy. And I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, except for Jim. I just wanted to thank all of you for taking the time to be here and to come prepared. And I also wanted to give a big shout out to our team here today. A lot goes into preparing for these, and staff has done a tremendous job in preparing, and I'm so grateful for their hard work in doing this. This provides the council an opportunity to have a deep dive into looking at all things that are related to our finances. This is something that I know all of you take very seriously. And it's really a chance to have a big picture look at what we're doing as a city, as a community, and to make strategic decisions. So I hope that you find this to be of value today, and excited for all of the direction that we are hoping to get from you today. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor to jump in.
So it looks like, I'm going to actually turn it right back over to you. We're starting with you this morning. So annual goal setting and strategic plan. We're going to start with our city manager, Jacob Ellis.
All right. Let's see if we can make this fit. Perfect. So this is probably my favorite exercise of the entire year, is where we get direction from you as a council on the big picture priorities that you would like staff to undertake and to focus on. And so we have a very ambitious schedule of different things. Some of these, of course, are carryovers. Not all of the projects that we undertake in the city are single-year projects, and so some of these are multi-year, and so we're continuing some work. Others are new, and so I'm going to briefly run through these with you, and really what I'm going to be seeking from you today is confirmation. Did we get it right? Are these the priorities that council has? Are there some that maybe are still good to do, but maybe don't belong up on this list because they are not of that level of importance? And if we missed anything, to let us know about that as well. And so without further ado, we'll jump in talking about financial priorities in terms of sustainable finances. The first one listed up here is City Park Revitalization Design and Funding Plan. And so one of the projects that I know you are all very well aware of is our City Park Revitalization Project. And the goal behind this particular item is to prepare a capital operations and maintenance funding plan so that we are ready for construction with that project by next summer. And by the way, I'm going to keep rolling through these unless you stop me and ask me questions. Next up, fiscal year 25. Measure X investment plan. This is something that we've brought to you the past several years to talk about how we're investing in Measure X to ensure that those funds are allocated in accordance with your direction and community preferences. Third, yeah. There's no slides. Is there supposed to be? Yeah, I would need to forward them. I can go through this version of the slide if you like, or we can stay on the dashboard. What's your preference?
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing it.
Yes. No, no pictures, no nothing better than this. No animation. There's some cool animation you guys are going to see today. I will not be one of those people sharing the cool animation. Mine's the boring static slide. And I think Jim brought the candy today, or Jackie. Yeah. All right. So can you guys? Does this work for you? Okay. So, third water wastewater rate study. We want to begin that rate study in Q2 of fiscal year '24. One of the things that we call out on this is ensuring that council receives regular updates. And we want to have those recommendations ready for implementation by January 1st, 2025. So we're beginning with plenty of time. We want to be thoughtful about this and make sure that it's well vetted and that you are fully informed of each one of those things that we determine along the way. LMD renewal initiative. So all of you are familiar with some work that we're doing in Zone 19. Pending the outcome of a Prop 218 election, we want to have a new contract, service levels ready to go for Zone 19, as well as look at a potential new LMD in the downtown area. So by the end of next fiscal year. Moving on to talking about our second strategic goal priority, which is ensuring that we have a strong economy here in Corona. The South Mall project. So our goal is to continue to work with Lab Holdings to expedite the South Mall redevelopment so that we are ready for full occupancy of the South Mall of the properties that are being redeveloped by this summer. Remember, summer does include September. And so, but it would be probably late summer, possibly early fall, but that's the goal, is to have that fully opened, fully leased up and ready for grand openings at that time. We also want to complete the 99-cent store SLA process, issue an RFP, and have an award to a developer for redeveloping that site by the end of next fiscal year. The North Mall. Obviously, North and South Malls are proceeding at a different rate, and our goal with the North Mall is to be able to expedite progress on that redevelopment project and begin construction by June of 2024. That is the goal at this point. Sci-Fi fiber optic network build out. Our goal is to have that network built out at least 25%, maybe more, by the end of June 2024. And so we are moving ahead with that. A lot of work goes into it. Sci-Fi is excited, and we are trying to finalize all of the engineering design work so that that's ready to begin deployment and start the build out. Our fourth goal in strong economy is to promote a thriving retail environment in Corona through partnerships with shopping center owners, property managers, using data, tracking sales, visitor activity, and having some robust marketing efforts to augment all that. And some of you got a sneak preview of that at our last committee of the whole, of some of the work that we have begun doing there. And so we want to make sure that we're moving that forward, as well as reporting back to council on the progress that comes along with that. That wraps up our financial and economic goals. Let's move on and talk about infrastructure. And one of the things you'll notice with the fiscal year 24 priorities is that we have spent a lot of time preparing and planning, and we are now moving into the implementation phases of this. And so you see, of all 6 goal categories, our infrastructure and sort of building things is becoming the heaviest category, with a lot of building going on. So first up, AI traffic signal optimization project, moving forward with that. We want to have a construction contract awarded by June of 2024 and go through the entire procurement process on that. Number 2, our 10-year citywide paving project. We want to complete the survey. That survey is now underway in terms of determining the condition of all of our roads, developing a rehabilitation plan for the next 10-year period, and we'll also be completing the 4th of the current 5-year paving plan for local streets, which includes Grand Boulevard and the majority of 6th Street and Lincoln Avenue. We're going to have that done by June of 2024. Third, a playground shade enhancement project. This is for both structures and trees. We want to bid and install shade structures along with appropriate trees to enhance shade at Lincoln, Cresta Verde, Mountain Gate, and Santana Park playgrounds by June of 2024. And so we will be launching that project, and there will be more to come in the future. Those are the initial ones up. And if you're wondering why these ones, we've recently invested in new playgrounds in those areas, and we'd like to preserve those playgrounds from damage, since they are some of the newest. And we will continue as a matter of policy when we put in new playgrounds to include shade along with those going forward as well. City Park revitalization. We want to complete the design work, secure required approvals, and begin construction pending council approval by winter 2024 on City Park. And so, to use Councilmember Speak's favorite phrase, pedal to the metal, We are rolling with that one as quickly as we can, where there's no delays built into that project, and so we will continue to transition from master plan to design and then into construction with all due haste that we can muster on that. And that's obviously a project that we hear a lot from the community. People are excited about it, and so we are trying to continue to move that forward as seamlessly and quickly as possible. McKinley Grade Separation Project, slightly less enthusiasm in terms of how excited everyone is about it, but we know it needs to get done, and it's going to make things better than what they are today. And so that project, there's a number of specific items that we hope to have done by April 2024, and that's obviously an important and very large capital improvement project in the city. An asset management plan, that's something that actually has come back twice now. We just didn't make the progress that we wanted to make. That was both due to vacancies, recruiting people, but it remains a priority, and it's something that we haven't stopped going after. And so we want to have a first draft of that asset management plan for all of our city infrastructure prepared, including condition assessments, life cycle determinations, and recommended preventative maintenance for all of our major capital assets, along with a corresponding funding policy by June of next year. And that's just one of those fundamental things that we need as a community to make sure that we are looking to the future to maintain what we've built and that we can maintain what we've put into place today. Number 7, Historic Civic Center revitalization. We want to prepare a programming and operations plan and begin design work for a complete reno of that building by June of 2024 so that we can enable that building's long-term use as a performing and visual arts center for the community. Number 8, Victoria Splash Pad. We want to complete construction and be ready to open by June of next year. It's an exciting project and a very, I think, needed one for that part of our community to make sure that we've spread out our splash pads. These are extremely popular in warm months with kids, and happy to see that moving forward. Number 9, Skyline Regional Park Master Plan. So what we want to do there is issue an RFP, select a consultant, and commence the master planning process by next summer. We have this tremendous asset, and we want to make sure that we are thoughtful and we have a plan in place that's driven by community needs and community desires so that that asset is maximized in terms of its use. And so that'll obviously be a collaborative process similar to what you've seen for City Park and other park master planning initiatives. Finally, Trailhead Enhancement Initiative. We want to improve the trailheads at Fresno Canyon and Skyline by 2024 to make it so that when you do visit some of these trails, that you've got a better place to park, that it's safer, more secure, and it may be that in the next month or two we have an additional one that we'll announce as well on that. But wanting to improve our trailheads is an important thing to allow people to get out in a more convenient and safe fashion. That wraps up sound infrastructure, and I have to tell you that's an extremely ambitious list of projects to be doing, but we're excited about them. Under Safe Community, our homeless strategic plan implementation, we want to have a complete system of services in place and implement a data tracking system to evaluate performance and the progress that we're making by June of next year. And so, as you're all aware, we're right on the cusp now of opening up our homeless shelter and having all of those last 3 years of work coming to fruition where all of these things will be fully active and operating. And we want to have that completely integrated and tracking everything so that we can measure progress by next year. Okay, we're good. Fire station number 2 renovation. We want to complete the site selection process and acquisition and begin construction by next June. So we'll have it fully designed and be into construction a year from June. We're excited about that project. A police department UAS program, that's unmanned aerial system. It's drones. We'll talk a little bit more about that today, but we want to have a fully operational UAS program with supporting staff and performance metrics by June of next year. I think this is a very exciting, innovative, and modernizing of the way that we do our business in the police department, and I think ways that can really help the community see progress when it comes to dealing with some of the criminal things that we have to deal with. A PD recruitment program, something else that we will provide more detail on over the coming year, but obviously this is a challenging time in public safety to recruit, and we want to have a forward-thinking strategy to make sure that Corona brings the best and the brightest to our police department, and has a sustainable strategy to bring in the personnel that are needed to provide the programs that we do, and that comes with the recruitment program. So we want to develop and implement an enhanced recruitment program focused on high schools, local colleges, and veterans by December of 2024. We will share more on that coming in the coming months, but something that we're excited about. And finally, and we're also going to talk more about this today, is our PD body-worn camera system replacement. Our body-worn cameras are at the end of their useful life, and obviously we continue to maintain industry-leading gold standard in PD when it comes to body-worn cameras and in-car cameras, and so that's something we're going to need to talk about and make sure that we've replaced those so that everybody has the right equipment going forward. Moving on to Sense of Place. 6th Street Beautification Project, we want to complete our traffic study, finalize the conceptual plan, award the architectural and engineering contracts, and begin construction by June of next year. That's also another long anticipated project that people are excited to see that we have most of the funding allocated for that. A good chunk of that came from our ARPA funds. We want to have that project moving forwards, and that's really focused. The epicenter of that is around the Corona Mall, and it will spread out from there, but we want to enhance that area and really start to make some of those physical changes that will support the new restaurants, breweries, eateries that are coming into the Corona Mall and emanating from there. We want to complete our Parks and Recreation Master Plan by this summer, so that spills into fiscal year '24. That's on track. Our Trails Master Plan, same thing, complete it this summer, also on track. Our new city brand implementation, you've all had a sneak peek at where we're heading with that. We hope to have that adopted by just about the end of this fiscal year, and then it comes time for implementation, and we want to start to spread that throughout our city branding, our facilities, vehicles, uniform signage, parks, media content, and more for that cohesive look and feel for our community. The old police building demolition, we want to have the contract executed and demo the building with new grass this originally says, it actually, what does it say up there? Did we change this? No. It has October 31st, 2023. That date might need to be modified simply because of some of the complexities that we've run into with that project. All of our communications and information technology cabling runs through the basement of that building, so we're going to have to do a few things to make sure we don't wipe out all of the communications in the city when we go into demo. So a little bit more work is going into that, so that date might need to be altered a little bit, but we are still moving forward with that right now. And really excited to see how that opens up the whole Civic Center Plaza with the lawns around that building. Phase 1 enhanced community events. We brought to the council a couple months back a enhanced community event schedule, and the feedback from the council was go big. And so we are going big with that, and this is year 1 of the ramp up for that, so we will have more staff, we will have more funding to bring in bigger and better events that are really, our community tells us all the time we want more things to do, and so we're ramping up to deliver on that. Our urban reforestation project, we want to have 3,000 new trees planted in the city by June of next year. That's on schedule with our 5-year replacement plan that has 15,000 new trees coming to the city. And I don't know if you've noticed, but as you drive through the city, on any given day when I go down a new street, or even the same street, right out of the blue, you notice there's a whole bunch of new trees that are popping up in different parts of the city, and that's largely been focused on arterial roads. That's where we've begun a lot of that. But even on side streets in the downtown, it's fun to drive around in a street that used to have no trees. One day, you notice that there's got a whole row of new ones coming in, and so we will continue to see that at the pace of about 3,000 trees a year. Our Heritage Room renovation, we want to renovate and reopen the Heritage Room in the library by June of next year. Excited about that project as well. There's so much great history in our community, and I know at least a couple of you that are very excited about that project, to create a place where we can house all that we have out there so that it's not lost, that it's not damaged. And so that's moving forward. And finally, we want to complete a feasibility study for a performing arts center and look at those findings with options and get council's direction on a preferred course of action by June of next year. So a lot of things moving forward with creating sense of place in the community, which brings us to finally high-performing government, our last of our 6 goals. There's 7 things that we're going to be working on this year. Obviously, first up is implementation of year 3 of our strategic plan, making sure that we continue to keep our eye on what we've said we want to accomplish, and we will continue to report up quarterly on that, on progress, and you've seen that over the past year and a half. And we're also going to be talking up, I think, next on what's coming for this year. Our planning and development customer experience project. We want to develop and finalize some conceptual plans and complete aesthetic improvements for the planning and development lobby by June of next year. And this is a collaborative effort with a lot of people on the team here to just create a better experience when you come to Corona. If you've been to a DMV, just think the opposite of that experience is what we're trying to work on. And so we want to make people feel more welcomed and have a better experience when they come to the city. It's hard enough to go through a construction process. We want to make it the best experience that we can. Number 3, citywide Invisio deployment. Invisio is a software, and this is a software that helps us align all of our activities. It provides more automated reporting. It will have a dashboard that can be public facing, and this helps take all of the many things that we're doing and coordinates it throughout the city and allows us to report out on that in a way that the community can follow it as well as council. And so we want to have that fully deployed by December of this year. So this one's we're moving forward with right now. Employee engagement. We want to conduct an employee engagement follow-up survey and prepare for additional actions. Each year we do this on an annual basis now. We did our first last year, and this continues to move forward. Obviously, our employees are both the highest cost center that we have for a city because we are a service organization, and making sure that our employees are heard, that they're engaged, and that they're as productive as possible is very important, so we continue to work in that area. Number 5, state and federal advocacy. We want to use contract lobbyists for state and federal advocacy efforts to adopt a new legislative platform, find sponsors for proposed legislation that Corona wants to put forward to address issues that we think are important, and complete a full cycle of advocacy and evaluate those results by April of 2024. We are in the interview phase now for our federal lobbyists, so we'll hope to have them on board in the next few months, and so that we will be able to pursue both state and federal initiatives that are important to the city. The second to last, community satisfaction surveys. We want to complete another valid, reliable, city-administered community survey by June. This is something that we've committed to do every year now, to check in with our community, ask how we're doing, track our progress, and see if we're moving the needle on things that our community has said are important. And most of the time we see that the results are very good, and sometimes we see we didn't move the needle the way that we wanted to, and that's okay, because we want to hear from the community to know how we're doing on that. And finally, last but not least, is a website redesign. We want to issue the RFP, select a preferred vendor, and begin work to restructure, redesign, and launch a new city website to improve the overall customer experience and ease of access to city services and information by June of next year. And with that, I think I'll ask you, is that it? That's, I'll check the other side, is the papers, nothing else there. If there's any questions, what we want to know from you is, does this resonate with you? Does this reflect what your priorities are? Did we hit the mark? And I'll turn it back to the mayor for any questions.
Thank you. You went a lot slower this time, which also gave me time to write notes, so that's good. So we'll start with my colleagues if they have any questions, comments, or complaints. Mr. Speak.
No, I don't have any. I think this is a great list, and you're right. We've been preparing, and now we're not only getting things done, we're preparing for the next phase of things. And I think I love the employee engagement part. Really interested to see the efforts that have happened over the past couple of years, to see how those are resonated with their staff. I'm very interested with the P&D customer experience project, getting more details on that. You know, that's one of my favorite topics. But the rest of this is all really good and lots of fun things. My only, I guess, concern would be we're going to be leaning on procurement a lot. I see a lot of, June 2024 deadlines, and I have no doubt that you'll be prepared, but it looks like there's a lot of things that are going to be kind of pushed into a very tight window. So though I do like to see progress in a very timely manner, at the same time I want to make sure that we're not burning staff out, and that we have a happy staff too. It goes back to our engagement part.
We have on the record Wes would like us to slow down a little bit, I think.
Right. I know, it's scary, huh?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I like getting things done, but at the same time, I don't want to kill anybody in the a comfortable speed is a good way.
Yeah, and can I respond to that? Is that okay? So it's a great point, and thank you for the sentiment. There is a fair bit of thought that goes into what we're going to accomplish within that year. And so a lot of these projects, it'll say like, issue an RFP, identify the consultant, get them under contract, and begin the work. So it's not always saying, we will have all of this done by next summer, because that's really too ambitious. We're not gonna be able to do that. And we've had that for some other projects. You've seen that for the Parks and Rec master plans. They've gone over 2 years. It's not that it gets done that year, it's that it gets launched and we've begun a scheduled program to get it done. And so that's part of the way that we manage that, is not saying we're gonna deliver on all of these things within a single fiscal year, because that really isn't possible. But we're gonna get it underway, we're gonna have a schedule, and we're gonna keep working on that.
I like that, and I didn't notice that theme, but the neat theme I did notice is that within every category, there are a lot of big projects that are external facing, that our community is going to actually like see a tangible difference. And those are the ones that I starred, it's the 6th Street beautification, it's the shades, it's the, increased or enhanced community events. And so I'm looking forward to the community, like seeing the results of the labor, right? Because there's all the internal projects are absolutely necessary in order for us to be able to support this work. But that's the stuff that I think people then actually like look around and are like, oh, my city's doing things. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you.
Jacob, I just want to get some clarification on the feasibility study for the Performing Arts Center. So confirming that will be presented to us, the results of that study by June?
That's the goal.
Okay.
We're going out to, I think we're very close to getting the consultant under contract now, and we think it'll take about that time. So that's the goal.
Okay, and then you also mentioned arts when it came to taking down the PD building. I can't remember how you referred to that.
So that was in connection with the Historic Civic Center renovation.
Right, but how does the arts, I thought you said arts and performing arts, how is that going to tie in to the Historic Civic Center?
Yeah, so the strategic plan identifies as a goal of the community is over time to make the Historic Civic Center a hub for visual and performing arts. It doesn't necessarily exclude a performing arts center in addition to that. That's
what I was
question.
just wanted to get clarification.
Yeah.
Basically, we potentially have 2 different locations of arts.
You could.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm just very impressed. That's it. I want to say thank you to you and everyone working on all of this. It's very impressive. I think the citizens are going to find it very impressive, and good job.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions. I just wanted to confirm, you had indicated that City Park would be construction ready by summer of '24,
Winter.
winter of '24.
We want the funding plan in place by summer because I like to be ready for things. And so the goal is to be ready to fund it by the summer, but I don't know that we will be ready for construction in the summer for sure. That's probably a little more ambitious than we can commit to. We're going to work like we want it to be done then, but winter is really when we'd be ready to be in construction, I think, practically speaking.
Okay. And then in the sound infrastructure, the playground shade enhancements, I know that we have some equipment on order for 2 parks, I think Fairview and Cresta Verde. Fairview for sure, I'm not sure the other one. But when we are looking at parks that we're doing the playgrounds for, are we now trying to implement a shade element as well?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm really interested in the planning and development customer experience project, and the only feedback that I have is that we shouldn't paint anything or do anything until we're adequately staffed. And I know that that's been a challenge and that's something that we're working on, but I would hate to build a great facility and then not be able to staff it properly. So that's just some feedback that I have on that. And then the website redesign, is that going to coincide with the rebrand? So we'll do that all kind of at the same time?
Yeah, there'll be concurrent projects. Obviously, the new website will be rebranded with whatever the final brand is that we've adopted for the city. It's going to take longer than it is. It will take longer to redesign the website than it will to finish up our branding, but it'll all be rolled out with the new branding. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I don't think that there's any more questions or comments, so we can now move to Ms. Finch for the strategic plan implementation.
All right, good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Donna Finch, Assistant to the City Manager. I'm very happy to be here today to talk about the implementation of the strategic plan for fiscal year '24. There's going to be some overlap between what I'm talking about and what Jacob discussed in the goal setting session, because a lot of our strategic plan activities and initiatives are also our goals for fiscal year 24 as well. But we do want to take this opportunity to just do a quick check-in on the things that we have programmed in the strategic plan for the upcoming fiscal year, and also highlight some of the things that we've accomplished. And you'll see that as an attachment to the PowerPoint slides. We have our implementation schedule for the full 5-year life of the strategic plan. We have several items that we've already accomplished in the first 2 years that we're really proud of, and you'll see those as kind of grayed out within that 5-year schedule. But we're making really good progress, and we want to make sure that we're highlighting that, and then also discussing the items that we have on the horizon for this year. So just to celebrate, our strategic plan had its second birthday. We adopted the strategic plan on February 17th of 2021. We just wrapped up 2 full years of its implementation, so we're really happy about that. As you know, we have 3 years left, and as I mentioned, we're making really good progress on getting through that. So I'll touch on some of that in the presentation. So just to do a quick recap of what a strategic plan is, as you can see in this graphic here, our strategic plan is set up similar to the style of a pyramid, where you have at the very top of that our vision, value, and purpose, which are kind of the top broad level statements about what we aspire to be as an organization. Trickling down underneath the vision, value, and purpose, we have our goals, which are the end results that we are working towards to achieve that vision, value, and purpose. Below that, we have several objectives in the strategic plan, which are the things that we need to do to achieve our goals. And then underneath that, we have our strategic actions. And these are the very specific activities that we report on a quarterly basis and track our progress to show how much closer we are towards moving towards achieving those objective goals, and then ultimately the vision, purpose, and values. And then at the very bottom, we have our performance indicators and milestone measures. That's how we measure our progress. So those are those quantitative data metrics that we provide updates on and statistics on how we're doing over the course of the quarter in implementing our strategic plan items. So why we do strategic planning, as you know, through our experience with the strategic plan over the last several years, this document provides a variety of benefits for the city, including us helping to identify what our long-term direction is as an organization. This document helps us figure out where we are, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there, and really creates that roadmap to put us on that path towards achieving our vision, purpose, and values. It also helps us provide focus for the organization to direct our attention to the things that matter most, the things that are most important for our community, for our council, and really helps us keep our eye kind of on the prize of what we're hoping to achieve while we implement our strategic plan items. As we're doing here today, making budgeting decisions, a lot of that is based around our strategic plan, and it provides that framework for us to be able to make those decisions and direct our funding priorities to the projects and programs that are most aligned with our city's goals and objectives. And then it also helps us improve our decision-making process to help us see the big picture when we're making those long-term decisions for the city. So I know we've seen this before, and I go over these in all of our quarterly reports, but I just want to quickly touch on our vision, purpose, and values. So our vision statement is what we aspire to become through the implementation of this plan. And as you know, our vision statement for the city is that Corona will be a safe, vibrant, and family-friendly community. Our purpose defines why we exist as an organization and what we are here to do. And the purpose for Corona is to create a community where everyone can thrive. And then we have our 6 values statements, which reflect our operating philosophy and our organizational behaviors that we commit to, encourage, and support. And our 6 values are that we are bold, we are humble, we are driven, we are honest, we are kind, and we are a team. And then, as you know, we have our 6 goals that define exactly what we want to accomplish and preserve through the implementation of our strategic plan. Those goals are financial stability, strong economy, sound infrastructure, safe community, sense of place, and a high-performing government. And then just a quick recap of our strategic plan document and how it's structured: 1 vision, 1 purpose, 6 value statements, 6 goals, 21 objectives, 134 strategic actions, and 125 performance indicators and milestone measures. And then this is just kind of a similar graphic to what we showed earlier with the pyramid of how we have our vision and purpose filtering down into our goals, objectives, actions, activities, and then the targets that we hope to achieve for each year. So our annual planning cycle starts pretty much today with our strategic plan, where we identify our annual priorities. We review the items that we have programmed for the upcoming fiscal year in the strategic plan, and just try and get some direction and feedback from the City Council on whether or not these are in line with the goals that you have for the year. From there, we work to prepare our work plans for the departments to make sure that the things that the departments specifically have programmed on their horizon align with our annual priorities and our strategic plan items. We use that to make our budgetary decisions and finalize our budget in April through June. And then over the course of the year, we present our quarterly progress reports. And I'll actually be coming back to you in a couple of weeks to present our quarterly report for fiscal year 23, quarter 3. And then we review our work plans on a regular basis. And then this coming August, we will be presenting our first annual progress report to kind of roll up everything that we did for the whole year and just highlight all of our accomplishments. Again, mentioned, we have our quarterly reports, which you've seen several times already, and we're really proud of the kind of new condensed document that we've put together over the last year to highlight some of those major accomplishments that we achieve over the course of the quarter. And then we'll be bringing our annual progress report, as I mentioned, in August of this year. So now I'm just going to quickly get into the projects and continuous efforts and performance indicators that we have planned for fiscal year 24. After each goal, I will just do a quick pause and give you an opportunity to provide any feedback or input. But again, this is our opportunity to really just check in with you, make sure we're really getting everything right that you hope to achieve through the strategic plan. And we're really happy to hear any feedback that you have on any of these items. So I'll start quickly with financial stability. We have one new project that's programmed for fiscal year 24, and that is to identify core services and service levels for both mandated and non-mandated services, determine resources needed to adequately support these services, and then reallocate the city budget to fully support these services. So again, this is a brand new item that we'll just get started working on for this coming fiscal year. Everything else that you see on this slide are continuing items. We have two projects that are rolling over from fiscal year 23 as part of the work plan that we're still working towards. One we're actually doing today with this workshop, identifying potential cost saving and cost containment opportunities. That is a project that is on track where we've done it a few years now, and it's to the point where it's pretty much institutionalized as part of our organization's activities. But we still want to make sure that we are keeping it on the project list to make sure that we're touching in on the progress that we're making towards achieving that. And then the other one for fiscal year 24, which is also having work underway, is to track our total grant funding activities. So we're in the process of bringing on a grant administrator to help us put together a system to do that. And we hope to see some great progress on that in fiscal year 24. We also have several continuous efforts. These are things that we're just doing on an ongoing basis. They don't really have an end date. They're just things that we are continuing to do as we implement the plan. We have those 4 items listed here, utilizing the strategic plan as a framework. As you know, we do that with our quarterly reports and these check-ins, pursuing a AAA a bond rating from S&P, Moody, and Fitch, regularly reviewing revenue sources, and proactively pursuing grants. And then we also have our performance indicators listed here. Again, these are the measures that we report on to show the progress that we're making towards achieving our goals. So I will pause quickly to see if anyone has feedback.
Thank you. This is a great list. I am very excited to see this identifying the core services and service levels. I would also like to make sure that we add in what our ongoing expenses would be for these service levels, because I know that whenever we talk about this, we're always looking at the back end, CalPERS and all the other expenses that come with this, and 100% we were so far down in service levels that we brought it up to a level now that I'm very curious about what this core will be and more importantly, the ongoing cost to ensure that we have, we don't get in the same situation that we got into before, where we have to make these drastic cuts, and then we're doing this peaks and valleys. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I actually have a question. When I'm reading that new for fiscal year 2024 project, it is a masterclass of saying a whole bunch of stuff without saying a whole lot. So I'm kind of curious if somebody could perhaps use lay terms for those of us that are just pretty not smart.
I will tailor this to you, Mayor. Now, in all seriousness, so we have all of our core services that we provide: police, fire, utilities, maintaining our parks, and then there's some nice to have programs. And of course, I won't call out which ones those are because each one of those programs are very special to someone. But they're things that aren't necessarily required in order to keep your water flowing, the streets paved. But there is a lot of things that we do that help provide a sense of community. I'll pick one. I'm gonna do it anyway. It's community events. Would the world keep spinning if we didn't put on a parade? I don't know, in the opinion of some people, but we have to make sure people have water, that there's sewer, that there's those fundamental services. But then there's other things that we do as well, and those are core service levels, or we'd call those mandated services. And then there's some non-mandated things. The state of California, no one says you have to put on a concert series in the summer, but there are things that we do. And so we want to identify the cost of our mandated services, all of the core things that we do, as well as non-mandated services, and make sure that we've properly funded them today and in the long term. So it's really just taking a thoughtful look at all the things that we're doing. And this came up, I think, early on when we were doing a SWOT analysis for the city, which is it's easy to start a new program. It's really hard to retire a program that maybe isn't really doing what we want it to do anymore. So it's making sure that we have a check-in from, every 5 years, every 10 years to say, are we doing all the things that we really want to be doing? And is there some things we should be allocating more funding to because it's a bigger priority? And are there some that maybe we could retire them now? And so it's making sure we take that thoughtful look at what we're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on financial stability before we move on? Okay, thank you. So I'll move on now to goal number 2, which is strong economy. For this particular goal, we do not have any brand new projects programmed for fiscal year 24. All of the ones that you see under fiscal year 24 projects are rollover items from fiscal year 23. So those 7 carryover projects from fiscal year 23 include creating a development handbook, reviewing and updating the city's purchasing process, which you will actually get a presentation on later this morning. We're getting really close to getting that goal complete, or that item complete. Partnering with the Chamber in its Corona 23 plan for local job creation to reduce local unemployment, creating an incentive strategy for businesses to locate in the city, exploring the feasibility of a facade improvement program, assisting longtime Corona restaurants to open smaller scale operations in the downtown area, and reviewing and updating the city's historic building guidelines. So those are the fiscal year 24 projects that we hope to have wrapped up by the end of this year. In addition to that, we also have 3 continuous efforts, projects that are just ongoing that we'll continue to implement over the life of the strategic plan. And these include partnering with regional workforce development boards to increase job opportunities, building partnerships and programs that support youth and adult development, and redeveloping the Corona Mall properties. And then in addition to that, we have 8 performance indicators. These are actually brand new items that were put into the strategic plan in fiscal year 23 with the adoption of the economic development strategic plan. So we're in the process of building up those metrics and reporting out on those with the quarterly reports. So I will pause there and see if anyone has feedback. Okay, great, thank you. All right, moving on to our third goal of sound infrastructure. We have 1 brand new project for fiscal year 24. That is to build an up-to-date geographic information system, or GIS, inventory of utility infrastructure. So that's something that's going to be kicking off in this fiscal year between our IT department and our utilities department to get that underway. In addition to that, we have 7 carryover projects from fiscal year 23. A few of those Jacob mentioned already, which is utilizing our asset management program, to ensure that the condition assessments, maintenance activities, and upgrades for park and rec facilities are prioritized and completed in a timely manner. We also are reviewing and revamping the capital improvement plan program, and you will get another presentation on that this afternoon on all of the work that we've been doing over the last few months to review and revamp the CIP. Developing a long-term capital reserve and asset management funding policy. That's part of the asset management program, which we hope to make some additional progress on this year. Developing an asset management program for all city infrastructure. Optimizing our traffic flows and improving responsiveness to traffic lights. And then, as you know, we're in the process of developing our park and recreation master plan and our trails master plan. And those are on track and close to being completed. And we'll be having those to you later on in the year for additional information and updates. In addition to that, we have our 3 continuous efforts, advocating with Riverside County Transportation Commission, or RCTC, and the state for transportation improvements that impact congestion throughout the city of Corona, continuing our efforts to embrace mixed-use developments throughout the city, and continuing efforts to implement the park sponsorship program. And then finally, we have 14 performance indicators under sound infrastructure. Based on our national community survey that we collected data on earlier in, it was actually at the end, I believe, of fiscal year 22. We have several of these indicators now, and I believe we're close to having all of our performance indicators for this goal. But we do have those listed here for your view, and we'll be providing updates on that with our quarterly report. So I will pause there to see if there's any feedback on sound infrastructure. All right. Moving on to our 4th goal of safe community. We have no new projects that are brand new for fiscal year 24. All of the items that you see over here are carryover projects from fiscal year 23. We have 11 carryover items, which include upgrading and maintaining the city's 911 system, determining appropriate staffing levels for effective emergency response, developing a process to scale emergency response, or creating a low acuity response model in fire, adopting best practices with computer-aided dispatch system, addressing chronic staffing issues in our dispatch call center, developing a long-term funding strategy for emergency service assets, promoting community involvement when identifying hazards and effective measures to reduce impacts, raising public awareness of local hazards and risks, creating a fire-safe council, meeting the mandated RENA residential unit numbers, and adopting a policy to approve and encourage high-density housing. In addition to that, we have 6 continuous efforts, which are ongoing over the life of the plan, and those are to implement the homelessness strategic plan, expanding the community emergency response team trainings, providing preparedness training courses, hosting events that put preparedness skills to use, developing affordable housing for lower income households, and developing affordable housing in areas that are within walking distance of public transportation and commercial services. And then finally, under Safe Community, we have several performance indicators, 31 to be exact, and these range widely over several service areas. Those include public safety response times for both police and fire, crime rates, traffic accidents, emergency preparedness efforts, homelessness and housing efforts, and just the amount of trees within the community that are planted and maintained over the course of the plan. So I will pause there for any feedback.
Just one or 2 questions. One, are we scheduled to have a presentation back on how the low acuity response model has been working with fire?
Absolutely, we will be reporting out on that.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. And then second, the chronic, I guess the word chronic staffing issue is appropriate term because we've been talking about it now, I think, for 4 years. Are we any closer to figuring out what the magic sauce is on that? If it's and I'm just trying to think of what does a fully staffed, happy, not chronically staffed issue dispatch look like in other cities? And, is it just the number of people? Why aren't people staying? All those, a million questions. And I just want to see if we're closer to figuring out what the magic combination is.
We'll have Chief Newman respond to that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Speak. It's a great question, and the answer is I don't think there is a fully staffed dispatch center. If it is, it's very rare, unique. Dispatch is not unique in the fact that every public safety agency, police agency, including dispatch, are struggling to find and hire and retain really good people. And it's a difficult job with a lot of multitasking and traumatic information coming in and out. And it takes a very special person to be able to do that. So we are hiring regularly. In fact, I just hired 2 more dispatchers, 1 part-time and 1 full-time this week. So now our goal is to get them through the training program.
Do dispatchers have an association, and I'm not talking about union association, but like a professional organization that is there one?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm sure there is some type of group, but like I said, I know that other centers, other communication centers, are struggling with the same task of filling, and we're all fishing in the same pond. So Mr. Ellis and I have been talking about it for quite some time of where we go find
Grow your own.
the different group, and we're trying to grow from within and maybe take some cadets. And we've obviously we have police officers that are moonlighting as call takers, and we have our crime analysts that's in there helping out. So they're doing a great job in maintaining our status quo. We're just looking to find what that extra bump will be. And currently we have 7 vacancies in our dispatch center.
I was just curious of whether or not there was some kind of professional organization looking at if this is really a chronic issue throughout the California or even the country, that if there was an organization look at this saying, hey, look, how do we increase our ranks? Maybe there's somebody we can partner with there if there is such a thing. I just don't know.
Yeah, we'll continue to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
I had two follow-up questions, and I was just talking with Councilmember Steiner. I thought that we had already established a fire safe council.
Cindy will take this, but yes.
You're correct, we have.
Okay. Well, it says in here that it's for a fiscal year 24 project to create one. So I didn't.
Yeah, I can take a look at the status on that. I believe if fire mentions that it has been completed, then we'll definitely remove that one from the list for fiscal year 24.
That should have been, that's an error. That should have been taken out.
Okay. And then I just had a follow-up question for Chief Newman regarding the staffing issues at the dispatch center. I was curious because I've looked at some other dispatch centers, and one of the challenges is just the way that they operate in the sense of mandating overtime and whatnot. And I'm curious, when it comes to retention, I know that that's a burnout issue, is literally having to work all the time. And so have we ever looked at, or do we need, is it like the cart before the horse? Do we need to have appropriate staffing before we could fix some of the ways that vacations are gone and staffing is mandated and whatnot? I know that in other call centers, that's an issue where newer folks that get hired on are mandated overtime with very little breaks in between, and the senior people are taking time off, and it burns out the newer people. And when it comes to retaining them, if you're already burned out before you've hit your 1-year mark, then that's a challenge.
Yeah.
So have we looked at how we are operating the dispatch center as a way to help mitigate some of those concerns?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. That has been an ongoing evaluation. In fact, last year we revamped our scheduling so that the overtime and the mandatory overtime that dispatchers are and were working, it was more random throughout, so they did not have a valid weekend, a solid 2 or 3 day weekend. They were coming in the middle of their weekends. We revamped the schedule so that their overtime is now worked on their work days. And while they still may come in on their day off and to interrupt their weekend, that is more their choice now versus a department choice. So I think we have done better in improving their quality of life away from work and giving them some downtime while their work hours here. They're doing a 16-hour work day. So it's a long day, not 4 or 3 in a row, but they are long days thrown into the middle of their week where they can plan ahead. And so I believe that has caused some more options for them to enjoy life outside of work and come back a little bit healthier. And then with regards to the seniority, that is also that scheduling. It doesn't play an issue with us. Believe it or not, a lot of our senior dispatchers enjoy working some overtime, and so they get to pick basically as first come, first serve. And was there another part of that question that I missed?
No, I just, not our dispatch center, but other dispatch centers, I've heard horror stories where,
Yeah.
folks are gone for 2 months and, newer folks are having to fill in, and it's just completely burning them out.
I will say, and I hope our dispatchers are listening, I think we have it pretty good. I think our dispatch center is in a good spot right now, and obviously we want to hire more qualified individuals to fill those gaps. But we have a great team in place that they care about each other. We care for them. And I think they're in a good spot right now, probably even better than they were maybe a couple of years ago, hopefully. They believe the same. The call taker position that council authorized for us last year, the year before, has been a tremendous help. And we talked about, to Councilmember Speak's point, how we're going to recruit new people. That is has been a great opportunity for us because it's a lower level than a dispatcher that requires less training and certification. And so we're bringing in call takers, and that may be another opportunity for us to kind of relieve dispatch positions in the future.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to our fifth goal, sense of place. We have two more. So for this item, we do not have any new projects, brand new projects program for fiscal year 24. The items listed under the fiscal year 24 projects are all carryover items for fiscal year 23. We have 12 of those. And that includes developing an additional performing arts venue within the city and or renovating the historic civic center as a performing arts venue. Also increasing large-scale recreation events, utilizing volunteer-led hikes, developing on-demand registration capabilities, reviewing and revamping the city's calendar of signature community events, designating the Historic Civic Center as Corona's Center for the Arts, reimagining the City of Corona's brand, identity, and story, improving the city website for ease of use, increasing access to city services and spaces for people with disabilities, developing an implementation plan for ADA improvements, expanding inclusive playground equipment across the city, and enhancing veteran services and programs. And again, these are all items with work underway or on track, and we hope to see significant progress on those or have them fully complete at the end of the fiscal year. Moving on, we have 3 continuous efforts under Sense of Place. These are ongoing items that will occur over the life of the plan. And those are promoting the use of public space for festivals or shows, updating the Mills Act landmark list, and ensuring robust engagement with a broad cross-section of all segments of the community when developing plans for new or renovated parks and facilities. For performance indicators, we have 14 indicators. One of them, we are updating the language for fiscal year 24. That's the first item that you see. It's currently worded as % of persons who click on Apply Now after viewing a posting on diversityjobs.com. It's been very difficult to get this metric and capture it accurately, just based on the way that Diversity Now is set up and all of the different ways that it feeds into different systems. So based on the fact that we are in the process of developing our EEOP plan, we have revised this metric to be stated as the % of targeted recruitments that are guided by EEOP data. So this would be specific to positions where we might see certain groups are underrepresented for those positions throughout the organization, and those recruitments would be targeted towards those specific groups to make sure that we're giving them an equal opportunity to come on board with these types of positions and moving more towards the goal in our EEOP plan. So that's one update to the performance indicators. All of the rest of them, the language is consistent from the previous fiscal years, and as I mentioned, we have 14 total. So I will pause for a second to see if there's any questions or comments.
I just had one clarification. Where we talk about in the fiscal year 24 projects, develop an additional performing arts venue, isn't that just mostly just completing the feasibility study rather than developing a second arts venue?
Yeah, and you'll notice it says and/or, and so yes, at this point, it's just completing the feasibility study. That's a determination to be made by the council before we would actually build one.
Okay, I don't want anyone to get the assumption that we're going to build or develop an additional venue until we determine that's the right thing that we want to do.
For sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are at our sixth and final goal, which is high-performing government. This one, we do have 3 brand-new projects programmed for fiscal year '24. Those are the top 3 listed under FY24 projects. And those new programs include exploring the option of instituting an employee mentoring program, recognizing and rewarding innovations and efficiency gains created by employees, and improving the quality and consistency of customer service by training staff on basic standards. So those are the brand new items for this fiscal year. The other ones are carryover items from fiscal year '23, and there are 12 of those. That includes increasing the frequency, quality, and quantity of resident feedback and engagement, which we are doing consistently with a lot of our programs and all of our outreach. We are creating a formalized staff training and development program, developing a new employee orientation program, reviewing, revising, and simplifying personnel policies, streamlining and simplifying the process for recruiting and hiring new employees, establishing a staff recognition program, replacing the enterprise resource planning or ERP system, finalizing the development of the electronic document management system, moving the voice over IP operations into the cloud, increasing the number of online options for all major city services, enhancing state and federal advocacy efforts, and pursuing meaningful award and certification opportunities. Those 12 ones that are not brand new are all underway and currently have significant progress that have been made over the last fiscal year. And just finishing up high-performing government, we have 3 continuous efforts. Those include ensuring annual reporting on the strategic plan, conducting periodic third-party audits in key service areas, and implementing quality improvements, service modifications, or program closures as needed. And then lastly, for our performance indicators, we have 11 performance indicators for this goal, and those are all listed on the slide here as well. So I will pause to see if there's any feedback on high-performing government.
Only thing that I wanted to touch on is the new for fiscal year '24, improve the quality and consistency of customer service by training staff on basic standards. I have an unusual love affair with customer service. I believe in it wholeheartedly, so I'm very excited to see that and to get the reporting back on that.
Okay, so I will just end here with a implementation summary slide that shows you where we started, what we've accomplished, and where we are now. So as you can see on this slide, in the first row, we started with 134 total strategic actions, annual actions, and continuous and as-needed efforts. Over the first 2 years of the plan, we've completed 52 of those, which is 39% of those items. So we are right on track for where we should be at this point in the strategic plan in getting those items implemented. Currently, we have 66 items that are programmed for fiscal year '24. And as you can see, based off of how these are set up over the 5-year course of the plan, we had majority of our projects really front-loaded in the first few years of the plan, which is why you're seeing a lot of those kind of carry over the course of the plan. But as we continue to wrap those up in fiscal year '25 and fiscal year '26, which are the last 2 years, you'll see we're going to have less and less items that are scheduled to be programmed, and we'll really be focusing on institutionalizing those new items that have been implemented over the 5-year course of the plan. So again, we're very happy to share all of our accomplishments with you. Appreciate all of your feedback, and that wraps me up for my portion of the presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any final questions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Finch. And we are doing well on time. So going to move on to financial metrics. Christine Thompson, Accounting Manager. Come on down.
Thank you. Good morning. We will take a quick look at some of the financial metrics we use focused on managing our debt and financial stability. First one is the bond credit rating. Our target is AAA. By June 30, 2022, All our bonds are rated at AA or above. Our pension obligation bond is rated at AA+. And more good news coming from this year's most recent credit review from SAP, our wastewater revenue bond was also upgraded to AA+. So we're on track to reach our target. Next, outstanding debt per capita. Our target is less than 2,000. We're at 2,212 at the end of fiscal year 2022, since the issuance of pension obligation bond has made the pension liability a reportable debt. It has dramatically changed the numbers in the debt metrics. Excluding the pension obligation bond, the city's debt per capita is at 557, the second lowest among the comparable cities in the Inland Empire, behind the city of Temecula. In the meantime, compared to other cities in Inland Empire that also issued pension obligation bond, we're close to the City of Ontario's 2,209, still among the lowest. Over time, we'll see the debt per capita trending down to be within the target as we're paying down the debt. Next metric is the percent of debt compared to legal limit. Our target ratio is 10% or less. We are on track with that. The legal debt limit is 15% of assessed property value within the city's territory. Our legal debt limit is at $3.6 billion for fiscal year 2022. Including the pension obligation bond, we are at 6.99% at the end of fiscal year 2022. We are still among the lowest ratio compared to other Inland Empire cities. Riverside still has the lowest ratio at 0.5%, followed by Temecula at 0.67%. Last metric on this page is debt management, debt payment as a percent of operating budget. Our target is less than 10%. The pension obligation bond has increased the ratio to 11.03%. However, we expect the ratio to coming down to be within the target in the next couple of years as we paying down the debt. Moving on to next slide. Diversity of revenue sources. Our target ratio for sales tax is 50% or less as a percentage of total general fund revenues. We are on track with that. In fiscal year 2022, sales tax is 47% of the overall general fund revenue. This number includes revenues from MeritX. We expect 2023 sales tax at a similar ratio. Next metric, our target funding ratio for the city's unfunded accrued pension liability is 100% or more. With the pension obligation bond payment we made to CalPERS, we are on track with that. However, CalPERS actuarial report for fiscal year 2022 does not include the pension obligation bond payment we made. Instead, it will be included in the 2023 report. Since the report valuation date is 1 year behind, we still see a pension liability of $210.9 million at the end of fiscal year 2022. At the same time, because CalPERS investment earnings in 2022, the liability decreased $70.3 million from $281.2 million in 2001. We expect to see our pension liability fully funded in the year 2023. Next is the General Fund Emergency Contingency Reserve. The target is 25% of operating expenditures. We are on track with that. At June 30, 2022, The general fund has contingency reserve of $41.7 million. The next, major operating funds maintaining adequate fund reserves. The target reserve is an amount that covers 3 months' operating costs. General fund is on track with that. Utility department is in progress. The department has set up a reserve policy in fiscal year 2022 to contribute 10% of the net operating income to the reserve until reaching the target of $40 million. $1.6 million of fiscal year 2022 net operating income has been contributed to the reserve. The last item on this page, percent of assets funded for scheduled repair and replacement. The target is 100%. We'll come back with an update for this item once an asset management plan is created and adopted. That's all on the financial health metrics presentation. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Thank you for the presentation. This is a great report card of the hard work you all put in the last few years. I did have a question. I mean, I love all the stuff that's trending well, and I think there's explanations for all the stuff that did not. I did have a question about the diversity of revenue. With 50% being the target, is that a target? Is that a generally accepted target, or is that our own target? And the reason I ask, and I'll preface that with the reason I'm asking, is that that's the most unstable one that I'm in my opinion. So property tax, it can go up. It's tend to, if it goes down, it's going to be by a small portion. If we, God forbid, enter any kind of, I'm not going to say any of those words because if you say them, they come true, right? Like Beetlejuice. That we're vulnerable to seeing, decreases. So I'm just a little bit leery of having that number so close to 50%, because then we have to, I guess it goes back to our core services discussion, but curious about how that number has come about.
That was a number that we had set, and of course that was set before Measure X came into play. And we do want to make sure that we have definitely a good diversity for exactly those reasons that you mentioned. And so we'll continue to look at that number. Measure X, as you know, has come in better than we originally expected, and so that's why you'll see that number is a lot higher than it was originally estimated to be.
Yeah, it's one of those things I kind of lean on because I see other cities that are, like Menifee, they're going through all this building and they're flush with, with money that comes with new development. And I also see them making similar mistakes to ones that we made, which is spending like that money was going to come in forever. And I'm not equating sales tax to development fees, but I want to make sure we're being very cautious of, fees that we know that can vary over time.
For sure, and that's the intent behind keeping our eye on the diversity of revenue sources. And to Kim's point, that is a somewhat of an arbitrary figure. It sets a target for us. Could be higher, could be lower. It's a double-edged sword. Sales tax on the one hand is volatile, and so you don't want to rely too much on it. On the other hand, we get a lot of sales tax that's generated by outside people coming into our city spending money, which is much better in our opinion than just putting that on property taxes. So it is kind of a double-edged sword, but it's one that we want to keep an eye on. I once worked in a community where 80% of their revenue is generated by one company that resided in that city, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy. And so that's kind of sort of that historical experience of keep an eye on where your money's coming from to make sure you don't become too reliant. And we have really good diversity. It's just a number to sort of peg out there and keep an eye on it. So.
Any other questions?
I have one in regards to the status. I'm just trying to make sure I understand these arrows. Some of them are going up and some of them are going down, but, well, like, for instance, percent of debt compared to legal debt limit, our target is below 10%.
Yeah.
The arrow says it's going down.
Yeah.
Is that because it's below 10%? Because it's up versus the previous year? I'm trying to make sure that I can understand them.
Yes, the arrow is going down, which means our debt It's increased because the issuance pension obligation bond, we increased from less than 1% to close to 7%. That's not a great sign, but at the same time, it's still within our target limit. It's 10%. So, although the pension obligation bonds save us $166 million over the long term, in the short term, it does increase our debt.
Mayor, if it also is helpful, red is bad and green is good. And so if it's trending up in a green way, that's a good thing. If, let's say, crime was trending up, that would be a red trending up. It's a bad thing. So you're right. Sometimes a trend up or down might reflect two different things. The colors were an attempt to try to signal if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Thank you.
Got it. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Thompson, and you caught us up on time, so great job. Moving on to the American Rescue Plan Act funding update, Luis Navarro, Senior Financial Analyst.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. In this presentation, we will be providing somewhat of a quick update on the ARPA funding. If you do remember from when we initially appropriated these funds back in November of 2021, we made a commitment to come back to council to provide an update at least twice a year to make sure we're on track to spend the funding by the deadline date of December 31st, 2026. As an overview, today we will talk about the status of the ARPA funding, current allocations, and of course, what the next steps are. Taking a stroll back in time, the American Rescue Plan approved a total of $1.9 trillion in funding, and of that, $350 billion was approved towards states and local governments. The city of Corona was allocated $29.2 million, and we have received the full amount. 50% was received in July of 2021, and the second, or the remaining 50% was received in August of 2022. And again, most funds must be fully spent by the December 31st, 2026 deadline. This slide shows the 4 different categories for the ARPA expenditures. The city decided to allocate funding in category 1, that's negative economic impacts, and category number 3, and that would be the revenue replacement category. As you can see, a little small note at the bottom. The information is based on current allocations and doesn't total 100%, and that's because we have currently an unallocated amount of $500,000. This slide shows the breakdown of the current allocations by categories and projects. As you can see, we currently have $3.01 million, or 10.3%, in the negative economic impacts category, and $25.65 million, or 88%, in the revenue replacement category. This slide shows the proposed allocations, also by category and project. The proposed changes include adding the $500,000 that's currently unallocated to the 6th Street beautification project, as well as transferring the remaining balance in the PPE vaccines programs, which is just short of $990,000, and transferring that also to the 6th Street beautification project. These recommended changes will be included with the Q3 budget update, which will be taken into account the first week of May, the May 3rd meeting. Moving on to individual project statuses. For the negative economic impacts category, there are 6 projects. 2 of them have been completed, and the other 4 are currently on track to be completed within the ARPA timeframe. I won't go through them all, but as an example, for the business grants project, staff is reviewing grant program guidelines and preparing for the procurement process to onboard an administrative grant partner. The rental assistance at the Historic Civic Center. All tenants were awarded 2 years of rent reduction, 30% rent reduction that is, and that's retroactive to January 1st, 2021, and that'll continue through the end of this calendar year of December 31st, 2023. For the revenue replacement category, we have 10 projects. 1 of them has been completed, and the other 9 are also on track to be completed within the specified timeframe. Again, I won't go through all of these, but the 6th Street beautification project, The traffic feasibility scoping study is underway. The traffic signal optimization, the old PD building demo, and the communication studio are all in the RFP stage, with the old PD building demo already out to bid. And the broadcast systems overhaul is currently in the design phase. As for the next steps in the process, we will submit the next quarterly report to the U.S. Department of Treasury, and that'll be at the end of this month. We will bring forth the proposed funding adjustments to the May 3rd council meeting. And finally, to keep on providing updates to council, with the next one being at the fall workshop. And unless there's any other questions, that concludes this presentation.
Thank you. I don't have questions necessarily. I really appreciate the ARPA status update. This is one of those projects that's like, or one of those opportunities that, you know, there's a saying in Spanish, que no hay mal que por bien no venga. Like, there's nothing bad that like doesn't also bring some good.
Entiendo.
And, you know, COVID has brought us ARPA, and ARPA is bringing us 6th Street beautification. And I just thought it was kudos to move things into that project, because I know that, you know, when is the next time? Ideally, hopefully never, that we have something like the pandemic hit, but then for there to be a financial windfall in this way. So good eye, moving that over.
Okay, if there's no other questions, thank you so much for the update. We'll move on to utilities rate study. Tom Moody will be presenting the item. And you're 7 minutes ahead of schedule. Doesn't give you an extra 7 minutes, though.
Shouldn't have told me then. No, I'm just kidding.
Arm set.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come here today and talk about the utility financials. We've had a lot of opportunity over the last few years to really get in front of you and discuss the city's financials and participate in this planning exercise. The ask today is that council provide feedback and information on the upcoming utilities rate studies, and we're going to be coming back to you. During the last rate study, we learned a lot, and I'm super proud of the team that worked on that rate study. Some of the feedback we received was related to communication. Some of our customers appreciated the Facebook Live segments. Some of our customers appreciated the in-person meetings that we had held, and some of our customers wanted more. And today, we want to do a better job this time. So we want to take that feedback and we want to include that in this next round. I want to let you know today that it's important to the department that we have lots of check-in points to ensure both the customers and the council are well informed. So today is part of that plan of communication. The utility financials, when we look at utility financials in a simplified form, we talk about our revenues. Those are the rates that are paid by the customers. We talk about our operating expenses for raw materials. That's water, that's the untreated water that we receive, utilities, chemicals, laboratory, staffing. We look at our reserves, which we heard a little bit about. That's our 90-day target that we want to have for operating reserves, and we're contributing to that every year. And then we look at our reinvestment. Our CIPs are our reinvestment into the assets. We have about $1 billion worth of assets in the ground if you were to replace them today. And it's important that we reinvest in those assets. And then we want to have a healthy fund balance. We want to make sure. Utilities, a study by McKinsey & Company says that a proactive approach to how far out organizations project their data has been found to consistently result in higher performance than those focusing on short-term results. And the reason behind that is the increase in business performance is because multi-year financial planning allows companies to make better formed decisions, allocate resources more effectively, and respond more quickly to changes in the business environment. So looking at our water, this is the analysis that our department does. As we mentioned during the previous rate discussion, we would be coming back to you on a regular basis, and that's approximately every 5 years, to continue with a more comprehensive analysis of the utility department's financial outlook. Each utility that we're going to be discussing today, water, reclaimed water, and sewer, follow a similar pattern to the trends shown here. And what you see is that the revenues generated and the expenses, the operating expenses, begin to equalize. And when revenue and operating expenses begin to equalize, what that really means is that we're drawing down on our fund balance if necessary, and or we're limiting the investment of our capital. And so we want to have a real healthy financial plan, and that requires all of those categories to be met: revenue, operating expense, capital improvement, and healthy fund balance. So in moving on to reclaimed water, as I mentioned, you'll notice in some years on these trends, you'll notice in some years that we're hit a little harder with increased capital investments. And a lot of that is really due to timing. We want to take advantage, for instance, we were talking a little bit about the street pavement program. We want to be in front of a street pavement program. We want to have our utilities replaced prior to going in and paving that street, if we think we're going to be there within that within a 5-year period, right? So we don't want to pave it and then go and tear it all up again and redo that. That doesn't make a lot of sense. RCRA, recycled water pump station, is one of those things that we'll see here. We have an expense coming up, but really we are partnering with multiple agencies, and that expense is going to happen, and we want to be a part of that. So we have to be able to make financial decisions associated with that timing, and so it's important that we're planning for that. And then also in this slide, you'll see that fiscal year 27 and 28, the expenses drop off considerably, and that's really because of paying off some of our debt that we have. And that all gets factored into the rate studies as we talk about that. So we talk about rate studies, and it's important to know what a rate study does for us and what it tells others about us, right? So for us, it tells us our current position. We do this annually during the budgeting process. We look at our revenues, we look at our expenses, and we can do this on an annual basis. But the rate study gives us that longer-term projection. It's really important for us. So we know, are we on target? Are we trending low? Are we trending high? And why? It provides us a plan to measure against annually. We can look at what the rate study said we were going to project and what we're actually bringing in, and then we can make some decisions based on that. It provides us decision points, and it provides us the information to make good decisions. Do we raise rates? Do we take out loans? Do we have a stable fund balance? Do we have the revenue to repay loans if we want to take those out? And or is there some combination of both that we need to consider? What a rate study actually tells others about us is probably one of the most important. It tells them that we're willing to evaluate our financial position and maintain a healthy utility. It lets them know of our creditworthiness. We talked about the wastewater bonds being moved up to AAA plus or AA plus. AAA soon, we'll hopefully get there. But AA plus, that's a great thing. People know that we're reinvesting in our utility. And then it also tells others whether or not we're collecting enough to reinvest back into our utility. That's an important thing. Reinvestment is important. Utilities are here to operate and then reinvest. And so I think that that's something that we need to continue to be mindful of as we talk about rate studies. Sorry about that. The electric utility. Now, you might see a slide like this and think, why do a rate study on electric utility? Its revenues are good, expenses are maintaining, the fund balance is healthy. Well, if we think about that, the electric utility is about 66% through its useful life. A lot of the assets went in right around the same time. And so we want to be able to look ahead in the next few years and see if we need to make a small increment adjustment today to ensure that we have the revenue and the fund balance for the future. It's important that we're on top of that. And so what we're doing is we're just taking a look. Now's the time to engage in this process prior to having any drastic needs. So what does it look like? Here today, we're at the council talking with you. The next few things we're going to be looking at over the next 12 to 18 months is RFP, bringing that RFP back. What does the rate study tell us? We're going to be having regular check-ins, and then we'll be doing some public outreach and some campaigns associated with that. Additionally, these are some of the anticipated deliverables. The items shown here are a consistent set of deliverables that we find for our industry, and we're going to actually put these in the RFP. This is what we're going to be asking the consultants to report back on. Additionally, there may be things that the consultant finds. They do this professionally, and so there may be other things that they want to add into the deliverables that we can talk about. As we bring this back to council, the information may be presented as an individual deliverable, or it may be presented bundled together, depending on the volume and complexity of that information. As mentioned earlier, it's important to the department that we have lots of check-in points. We want to ensure both you and the customers are informed of the process, what it looks like, and what's going on. So we'll be coming back throughout these deliverables to provide more and more information. The takeaways that we have. So strategic goal number 1, financial stability. That's a citywide goal, and it applies to every aspect of what we do. In the audit that we had recently, it indicated as one of the audit recommendations, number 12, was to regularly assess rates. So we're fulfilling that portion of the audit. Strategic goal number 3 is sound infrastructure. And this is where we need to know and ensure that we have capital money to continue to reinvest for sound infrastructure. And then continue with regular council updates. So what are our next steps? As shown in that previous slide, we're going to be issuing an RFP this spring. We're hoping to get those results of that RFP and return back to council during the summer, and then we'll begin the rate study. We'll issue that, approve that, and then move through, hopefully, and begin the rate study sometime in the summer. And then we'll begin the check-ins during the late summer and fall when that information becomes more and more available. So again, the ask today is feedback and input. And in closing, I would say that a rate study provides us the opportunity to review the rate structure to ensure rates are set appropriately and regularly, to reflect changes in operating costs and the cost to implement capital projects. It's important to ensure that our ongoing rate revenue is sufficient to support upkeep of the infrastructure. Preventive maintenance and routine replacements are critical to ensuring long-term viability of the utility and to avoid more costly replacements in the future. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. I understand that we need to do this. I'm very excited to see how this all turns out. But I am concerned about the time frame from when we have, the issue the RFP to the check-in. I know that the last time that we did this, it was traumatic, I think is a nice way to say it. But I appreciate that we're doing this more. We're going to be doing this regularly. We're going to be doing these check-ins with us. I would like to know maybe after the RFP is issued, because these studies are based on what we want to do, right? So the projects that you want to, that the utility wants to push forward over the next, 5 or 10 years, I would like to have a check-in on what those projects are, just so we could ask questions about them and have a little bit more of an explanation instead of, at the end we're just, giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the whole thing. So if there's a way to, either in between or before or something, and I think I've mentioned to you before, Mr. Ellis, that if there's a way for this information to get to us first, just so we know what's being put into the rate study, and maybe give be able to ask questions and a thumbs up or thumbs down for items to be considered.
Thanks for the question. So to make sure I understand it, and this is obviously if the council wants us to do that, we'd be happy to do it. Sure. You're looking for the capital projects that would be included as part of the rate study prior to us actually conducting this study to do a review of what the capital plan looks like so that you understand what's going in and make sure council's comfortable with that.
You got it.
hit the nail on the head, because I was looking at these graphics and I'm thinking, if I'm understanding this correctly, then the dip happens because of these large CIPs, right? Or
Which page?
all three of them:
Okay.
the water, reclaimed water, sewer. The largest dips happen because of the bar, the orange bar, the CIP bar. So I want to better understand what the CIPs are as well. And I don't know what you know, but I can appreciate that, investing in our infrastructure is important. The example is the digester, when it blew up, how poorly that is, how much we've had to spend to, get rid of things that now we don't have the digester. So I understand and can appreciate why it's so important to go in and invest in our capital. But I want to know what that capital improvement is before, at some point, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't know if it's, after the RFP or before. And I also think it's really valuable for us to always continually get in this practice of just, it's a temperature check, right? Where are our rates? I want to dig in a little bit deeper, just like council members speak on like what is making that rate assessment. So I'm all on board, and I also understand that studying rates, understanding what makes up that rate increase, and then actually voting on there are several steps in between that. So there's no harm in studying, there's no harm in better understanding, but I want to dig a little deeper before we get going on that part.
Thank you for the feedback.
I just have one question, and it's with the rainy year that the nation has had, or California has had, do water rates go down when there's an abundance of water?
No. We actually just had a great conversation at the general manager's meeting yesterday, and we spent a good hour talking about the surplus water that the state is experiencing currently, and that the state is going to experience once the snowpack begins to run off. And unfortunately, there are many viewpoints in how to manage that excess water. And the current viewpoint held by Metropolitan Board, predominantly San Diego and Los Angeles, is that they're not discounting the water. That's your problem. That's unfair. And so we're working through, and we're trying to work through solutions with the Metropolitan Board on how best to handle the excess water for this coming year and hopefully another year beyond that. But at the point, no, they don't discount water. Water, the commodity, is just a portion of it, right? The infrastructure that we talk about, wells, booster stations, reservoirs, pipelines in the ground, those are the main components of infrastructure that we're constantly replacing and or doing maintenance and service on. So those costs don't necessarily go up or down based on quantity of water that's available in the state.
I did have one other question, and maybe when the RFP goes out, is there's 5 tiers right now for the water bill, right?
Correct.
And I know my family hits tier 6. So can we just slow it down on how fast we go through 1 through 3 tier, maybe a little bit?
And that's part of what we look at. The state, again, these are some of the challenges that we're up against, and one of the reasons why we really want to look at the water rates and make sure that we're looking at what we're talking about. So right now, we're at 55 gallons per person per day. And that number is going to hold true until 2024. So indoor residential use is 55 gallons per person per day. In 2024, that number is going to drop down to 47 gallons per person per day, and that's going to carry through 2029. And then it's going to drop down to 42 gallons per person per day, indoor water use. And that's also compounded then with the outdoor irrigation, right? That number is currently at 0.8. It's going to drop down to 0.63 and then 0.55. That's the simple version of it. There's a lot of complex law and regulation that's going into that. And as utility providers, that's being pushed down to us, and we're being told this is the number. And so it's very similar to, lots of things, but it's sometimes a challenge to meet when you live in a desert.
So
Wes said it, not me.
You're on the record, Wes. Thanks, Tom.
All right, Mr. Moody, thank you so much. That brings us 9 minutes ahead of schedule.
Can I get a point of clarification?
No.
Sorry, Mayor. You're saying before we get going, so to issue the RFP, I'm not sure.
No, I think what I heard from Council, Tom, is that prior to us initiating the actual study and having all of the components go into the study, Council would like to have an update on our CIP so that they know what are the capital improvement projects that are going to be factored into the rate study itself. Did I get that right, Council?
Yes, I would say who you pick is, I don't think that has to do with what we put in. We just want to know what's going to go in, what's going to be put into the sausage, so to speak.
Okay.
From the capital side.
Yes.
Come up here. Katie will jump in here for a moment.
So item 2 is the financial plan, and that is where we would consider all the costs. So that would be after the RFP. So at that point, we would say, okay, these are all the CIPs that we're planning on funding, and we would bring that back to council. And then to answer Vice Mayor Richens' request, item number 4 is the customer budget and rate design. That's when we would come back to council and say, this is the proposed budget that we're looking at and how those rates would align. So that's all. We anticipated those requests, and that's all built into the deliverables that we're planning to bring back to council.
Ms. Hockett, I wonder if having that conversation after the RFP, because the things that we're choosing to invest in the capital will impact what that rate looks like, the suggested rate looks like. And I anticipate probably having some of those projects come to us and we're like, is that an urgent need? Is that a later need? Having that kind of a discussion of the sausage making. So I wonder if there's value in having that discussion before the RFP goes out rather than after the RFP, because I wonder if it'll influence what the
Whether we go out for the RFP?
No, not whether we go out, which I think we should, right? Because we should always understand, but like what it is that we're asking them to calculate into the probable.
So can I just
rate.
interject on that? So the RFP itself, as you know, purchasing is a time-consuming process. I don't think you should see any impact of being able to determine which consultant you're going to bring on board. That shouldn't cause any problem with doing that before or continuing with that process while we bring you the capital plan.
Okay.
I think the critical point is when the time comes for them to come up with what that rate should look like.
Correct.
What are all the ingredients that go into
Yes.
that mix, and that we can bring.
That's what I
Yeah,
want.
that won't happen until number 5. So we won't. Number 0 on here is to go out for the RFP. So
Okay.
We'll get there. We won't make any decisions on that until we get to number 5.
Thank you.
Okay, still doing okay on time. We're going to take a 16-minute break, and we will resume at 10 o'clock.
Let me show you how to shake your lemonade. And you don't have to jump on anybody's train. Don't you sweat it when they're throwing you the shade. You can make it. Pick it up, sip a cup of tea. Yeah, looking down from where you thought you'd never be. The paparazzi flash cashing on the scene. You can make it. Make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you make it. Make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you can make it. Yeah, open up or else I'm knocking down the door. Gonna make you wonder why you never tried before. You strike a match, start the fire, por favor. You can make it. It might get crazy, but just take it by the horns. Make room for everybody tearing up the floor. Yeah, clap your hands, do the dance, make it yours. You can make it. Make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you can make it. Make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you can make it. Make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you can make it. Make it what you want. Go on. Clap your hands, do the dance, make it yours. Yeah, clap your hands, do the dance, make it yours. All right. Yeah, clap your hands, do the dance, make it yours. Yeah, clap your hands, do the dance, make it yours. Make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you can make it. Make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you can make it. Make it what you want. You can make it. You can make it what you can make it. Make it what you want.
I get my groove and swagger on, blasting out my favorite song. Let my freaky out, let it show. Let it show. Ain't nothing wrong with confident, loving me, I'm feeling it. Let the rhythm move and let go. Just let go. But some days I'm feeling so down and ain't feeling so pretty, yeah. But I go on loving myself, cause I don't need that pity, yeah. Cause I get high and low, yeah, dust it off and shake it off. High and low, yeah, dust it off and shake it off. Don't matter what they say, I'ma do my thing. I'ma do my thing. Just watch me. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. Just watch me. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. Check my nails, they looking fine. Got my hair back, feeling prime. Look out, baby, I'm on a roll. Feel the beat is coming strong. Make me wanna clap along. Feeling good wherever I go. But some days I'm feeling so down and feeling so pretty, yeah. But I go on loving myself, cause I don't need that pity. Cause I get high and low, yeah, dust it off and shake it off. High and low, yeah, dust it off and shake it off. Don't matter what they say, I'ma do my thing. I'ma do my thing. Just watch me. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. Just watch me. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. High and low, yeah, dust it off and shake it off. High and low, yeah, dust it off and shake it off. Don't matter what they say, I'ma do my thing. I'ma do my thing. Just watch me. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah. I'ma do my thing, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to continue on for our next section, which is going to be the purchasing update, discussion, and direction. But before I call Ms. Yasmin up, I wanted to see if there were any comments from the public. Nope, okay. Public says no. Let's see, where are we? Okay, purchasing division process updates and discussion. Yasmin Lopez, purchasing manager. Come on up.
Hello, hello. Testing, we're good? Okay. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. I want to thank you in advance for your time. We are very exciting about presenting today, as we are presenting a couple of changes that we'll be proposing that we feel like are going to have a positive impact on some of our processes. Just to give you a better understanding and a better idea of what we'll be covering today, here's the agenda. First, I'm going to be talking about some purchasing updates. Then I'll be moving on to the current and upcoming initiatives. We'll be talking about council-approved purchase orders and reporting data. Then I'll move on to requesting guidance on relocation of cooperative bidding from exception to bid to bidding procedures, and then we'll summarize with the next steps. Item number 4 does have an asterisk because it does require some changes to the municipal code, so just wanted to point that out. And for our first topic, first topics we'll be covering purchasing updates and the current and upcoming initiatives. So last time I was here as a recent hire during the fall last year, we were at 100% staffing in the purchasing division. Unfortunately, we've lost a couple of people, so we are currently at 80% right now, staffing capacity within the unit. We do have 2 positions currently open on a continuous basis. And filling these positions is one of our top priorities. We are continuing to work on training our different staff members. We did lose our purchasing specialist too, but we recently did hire another purchasing specialist too, and she's currently going through training. At the time when we actually finalized the presentation, we were averaging about 223 P-tracks in the system. At that point, about 100 of them were actually for fiscal year 24 priority ones. Because right now we're actually currently working with 2 fiscal years. We have our fiscal year 23 requests that are coming in, as well as some of the deadlines for fiscal year 24 priority ones. We're still working on those as well. So we're kind of juggling the 2 fiscal years right now. Just to give you a better idea, we have about 50 projects that actually require some type of informal or formal bidding. These projects are projects that exceed $60,000, where we actually have to conduct some type of informal or formal bidding procedure. The complexity of the projects can vary. Some of them are grant related, some of them have some type of federal requirements, others can be complex construction projects, and these do take a little bit of more time to complete. And I did run the numbers this morning, and we are actually right now at 356 PTRACs in the system. Like I said, a majority of those, I would say about 180 or so, are actually for fiscal year 24 requests that are coming in, as well as our current projects that we're currently working on in terms of bidding. Approximately 150 to 200 is our normal baseline that we normally work with. But like I explained before, we are expecting a high influx of requests as we get closer and closer to the fiscal year end. And again, just want to reiterate that we're currently training some of our newer staff.
Ms. Lopez, before you move on, what's the total staffing in purchasing?
We're down 2 people right now, so we actually have 2 recruitments going on.
So I mean, how many people total do you have in the department?
Right now we have 7, so we have 5 purchasing specialists, 4 purchasing specialists 1s, 1 purchasing specialist 2, and then the 2 leads, and then myself.
Okay, so of that 7, you 4 are new. That's a lot of
Yes,
turnover,
including
a
myself.
lot of new folks. Well,
Yes.
welcome, first of all.
Thank you.
Thank you, and please pass on to your team that we know they have a heavy lift and.
Yes,
and,
they work very hard.
All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm saying. Yeah,
So
we're down
your-
2.
Your
But
goal
it's not
is-
going to be a heavy lift. It's okay.
Your goal is 9?
Well, we are actually hiring for 2 positions right now.
So yeah, so your total goal is 9.
Total goal would be 10.
Oh. 7 plus 2 is 9? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Oh, you've recently hired someone, so.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to some of our current and upcoming initiatives. We want to ensure you that purchasing is continue to work on improving our processes and trying to find ways to streamline some of our turnaround time on some of these projects. I know my leads can attest to it, but I do ask a lot of questions in terms of why we're doing things a certain way. If we're doing something for a long time, why are we doing it? So we're just assessing everything right now to see where we can find some type of efficiencies. And even though these items are a little bit more internal in nature, we would like to share them with you because we are excited about where we're heading with these initiatives and the changes that we're planning to implement in the near future. So the first one is actually revising and standardizing all the RFP and NIBid bid templates. This is something that we're continually working on and currently working on right now. We are really hoping that by creating some type of more of a standard templates and something that we can use more user friendly, it would not only help us with our internal new staff that are coming in terms of training them to help us work on these projects, but also to our end users in our internal departments, where they will be able to use some of these templates to hopefully help us to get a better complete package when it's coming for us for review and processing. So that's one of our biggest goals right now. Our second one is to conduct a citywide training. We haven't started on this, but we will be working on developing a citywide training, hopefully to give the whole city an overview of the purchasing division, the different requirements. The goal is to establish some type of checklist on requirements for every different type of project that I think will be very helpful. And then also providing the purchasing process workflow chart. We have one right now, but we're just updating and making some revisions to it. And the third one is just to support the new ERP system project. We are working very closely with IT and all of the different stakeholders on different product demos, testings that are going on in the background, providing feedback to ensure that we obtain the best possible product that will meet our needs. Because we highly feel that having some type of contract management system would really help us out in the purchasing division. So moving on to our next topic, the council approved purchase orders reporting data. And for this topic, we are actually asking the city council to provide feedback and direction on the council approved purchase orders reporting data. And I'm gonna actually send it over to Kim. She has a little bit more knowledge and information on this topic, so she's gonna take over this particular slide.
Okay, so this was a request that came actually out of last spring financial workshop from Mayor Daddario to take a look at the items that council had approved purchase orders and when we were tapping into that contingency amount that was being requested through that process. So we had to make some modifications to our purchasing process in order to collect the data. So we started looking at POs issued July 1st, 2022 to the present. We had to pull together a group of staff in order to create some sort of report. There was purchasing manager, myself, our senior financial analyst, and some of our purchasing team that were involved in this process. I originally thought this data would be very easy to pull and extract from the system. However, we found that it is taking us more time to get the information to a point where it can be pulled into a report. So which is why we wanted to check in with council today on this information and find out the priority of it. So as we've shared already and in the past, purchasing has a very heavy workload with competing priorities. You'll see in your notebooks as well as on the next slide that we have 36 POs that we've completed as a sample group. There's about 160 more to complete for this fiscal year, and that's why we're doing a check-in today. So on the next slide, oh, there it is. You can see the 36 as a sample of our items that have been approved by City Council so far this fiscal year. And then the items that have had change orders applied, either positive or negative. In some cases, the originally PO has actually decreased due to just changes in the scope or changes in demand. And you can see those items noted there. And so I'll pause there for a minute so we can have a discussion and you can ask any questions you have about this particular item.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw when this came up the first time, and my experience and talking to many vendors, and I've reached out to many vendors at the city, and the constant that I hear is this employee thinks this is his money. Why is he fighting me on every change order? He fights over $1, $100, or $5, or so I don't see that we're getting, that this is being abused in any way. And I can only imagine what it took to just pull this sample and to have to reach back out and dig all this stuff out. I think that the return on what we're getting is, I think, not worth the investment that we're doing here. I think your time is better well spent doing other things. We already get exceptions when they come back to us. There's a reason why we do provide contingencies and we have an opportunity at our position to push back if we don't think there's a significant reason for a contingency. And I think as a body, we have pushed back when we saw contingencies, or at least asked questions when we saw contingencies that were a higher number. And either in some cases we've agreed, or in other cases we haven't agreed. And we lower that amount. But I think that there's a measure of trust that I think that we give when we give a contingency. I think a sample maybe, a sample every couple of years I think is fine. I think the work that you've all done here shows exactly what I'm seeing out in the public and what my suspicions have been. And I don't think that we should spend any more staff time on pursuing this any additional amount.
Well, all due respect, I couldn't disagree with you more. I think really, I'm curious, did we overcomplicate the request? All I'm looking to see is when the project is done, did we spend the contingency or did we not? And Councilmember Speak is correct. It will come back to us if the 10% contingency wasn't enough and there's another request or something along those lines. I'm simply looking for an end number of, we did 100 capital improvement projects. Each one of them had, and I'm making something up, and each one of them had a 10% or 20% contingency attached to them, whatever their request was. Did we yes or did we no go into the contingency? And so that's all that I want to know. I don't want to know things on a as it's happening basis. It's the completion of the project, right? Because I truly believe that at the completion of the project, if every single time we do something, the contingency is being used, are we not writing it clearly? Are we experiencing some sort of challenge in the field? Or is there an extenuating circumstance that's happening where we need to look at the way that we write the RFP perhaps? And then, I guess there's a separate subset for any time that there's a request that's going over the contingency, what happened, right? I mean, that's part of the explanation. But I don't want this to be difficult in any way. I want this to be very simple. Did we go over the contingency? Yes or no? That's it.
I think that the point is they're saying is that in order to do that, they're going to have to open up every single one of these projects, and that takes time. And I think that if the idea is to not provide contingency or have feedback to us when the contingency is used, it kind of defends the idea of having a contingency. So, I'm fully okay if you look at a project, and I've said it before in some of these, we voted on things where I've seen a 15% contingency, and I'm saying, tell me why, because this seems to be a pretty straightforward project. Why would we have 15% of additional that we would need to play with? Tell me what the thing is unknown, because I fully expect when you have a project where you're either digging something up or you're getting into some existing building and you uncover, whatever the nightmare thing is behind the wall, yeah, get it. Or we think, yeah, there might be, a small chance of that, and that's what the contingency drives on. So it's either, to me, if we want to hear back, if we exceed the amount that we've awarded, then we should have a discussion about having no contingency, and then having it all come back to us to have a review. But I think that, as you can tell here, we're not seeing, us giving out, we don't give out money very freely. And like I said, I've gotten complaint calls. I've gotten, in fact, I think OFTAB was one of the people that was spelled out to me by a contractor that was kind of upset and said that, look, does he think this is his money? Why is he fighting me over $100, bolt or something? It's just, it's crazy and it's ridiculous. And I flat out told the guy, look, this is the way I want our employees to feel. And so I kind of reached out to a couple different folks that I've, saw that we had awarded, and I said, hey, how did this go? Did you use your contingency? How was the city on providing it? And every answer on almost every single time was not that we were being unreasonable, but we were hammering folks to prove it. So I think either we trust staff and we've provided a contingency. I don't have any problem with doing a sample every now and then, but to keep a running total of whether or not, it sounds like it's a heavy lift. And I as you can tell, we have a significant turnover. We're short staff. We ask these folks to do a lot. I made a point earlier in our meeting that we have a lot of things coming up that are going to be resting in their queues, and I don't want to give them anything else, especially something that's not going to show or hasn't proven. Like if we saw, to me, if we were giving out contingencies freely, just like your child, right? You give your child wants a cookie, your kid wants two. If we gave out contingencies pretty freely, you're going to see contingencies go over that amount, and it would come back to us. So if I saw a lot of things going over budget and having to come back to us, I'd say, yeah, maybe there's a problem. We should go back and look at this. But I see this as basically we're spending dollars to find pennies.
So every project that we approve has a contingency. The only time that there's a discussion about it is when it's over the 10% as per the municipal code.
No. Every project that's awarded in this room, there's a contingency that can be discussed, and I've pushed back. There was contingencies that came in at 10 or 15 or 15 or 20%, and we pushed it back to 5 on some of them, and push and say, hey, this is why did we need contingency on a fleet vehicle? Sorry.
I get that, but every project, the basis, the standard is a 10% contingency. Every single one. If there's something that catches one of our eyes where it's 20, like there's some of them in here that are 25%, we ask questions. Every single one is 10%. All I want to know is at the close of the project, is there a box that you could check that says, went over the contingency? That's all I want to know. Because we've been in this room before where we've been asked to approve additional money, and the first question that I've asked is, did we have any contingency? Oh no, that's already spent. Okay, great. I just want to know if at the end of the project, did we go over the contingency, yes or no? I don't want it to be difficult, and that's why I asked, did we overcomplicate this? Is there a process that you guys go through when you close out a project that you could just simply say, went over the contingency, yes or no?
Could I just interject really quick? If you're asking if we go over the contingency, that has to go back to council. So anytime that,
All I'm asking is just denote a box. There was a contingency that was already approved, right? And I'm sorry, did we go, I'm so sorry.
So you mean, did we
we go
use-
into the contingency?
We used the contingency,
That's
I
what
understand.
that's what I
Okay.
wanted to know. Did we use the contingency, yes or no? And so, if it goes over the contingency, yes, it has to come back for approval. I just want to know if the contingency was used or not, right? So I don't want to completely complicate this process. I just want to know, did we use the contingency or not?
So I think the question, and maybe there's the confusion, going forward, would it be difficult to do?
that I'm not sure of yet.
We'd have to take a look at it.
A look
because-
at it.
Yeah, we'd have to look at it with the current fields that we have available in the system in order to generate that where it's not too much of a manual effort. We definitely would have to explore it a little bit more. Because what I think I misunderstood in the original direction, because this is every PO that's we were looking at that has been approved by council and not necessarily focusing in directly on CIPs and looking at them when they come to the completion. So I misunderstood then from the original direction.
In terms of the utility to council, I guess the question that staff might have is, if all you're going to ask is, did you use it or not? That might be one thing, but I don't know how that would provide a lot of value unless the second question came is, why? And for how much? And what was the reason? And that's where it becomes more complicated.
So if it goes over the requested amount, it has to come back to council anyway.
That's correct.
Right? So we should be aware of that. All I'm saying and what we discussed was, every project, whatever it is, capital improvement, request, RFP, whatever it is, has a 10% contingency baked into it. And in this room before, when there's been requests for additional money, I asked the question, have we used the contingency? Oh, yes, we have. Okay. And so I'm curious, and what we talked about is if we're doing all of these different projects, and it doesn't matter what they are, but if they have a contingency attached to it, are we using it? Yes or no? That's all I want to know, because I believe that there is data that will lead us to say, hey, we've used contingency money on 99% of all of our projects. Are we doing so, or is there something wrong?
But I would say, Mayor, I'd say, and doing somebody that works in the private sector for government clients, it's a standard thing at every single level of government that they have a contingency, and the reason why is efficiency. So you have a contingency. So I'm saying if you're arguing just to know whether or not we use contingency, that's what it's for. It's for if you have an unforeseen issue, so you don't have to go back. If you're saying we shouldn't spend any more money, we shouldn't spend any more money than the contracted amount, and that we may have an issue with writing proposals or writing RFPs, then I think that's a self-learned thing. So if we write an RFP and we keep getting change orders, then we're going to get better as we do it. Now, do we? I mean, I see what you're saying, and I think Mr. Ellis is saying, all right, so we'll play devil's advocate and say, all right, we'll just say 90% of them have exceeded. So what's question 2? Why? Right?
No, for me, it's just did they use the contingency?
Well,
That's where everybody's getting conflated.
So we'll just skip to the end and say, all right, we'll say that 90% of our projects use a contingency. What's the direction?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So if you look at some of the original PO amounts, there's a couple $100,000, but when you start to get into the 3.5 and above, and some of these $1 million requests, those contingencies become a lot of money. And if they don't come back and say, hey, we need to go above the contingency that was already approved. Hang on one second. If they don't come back, then I'm curious if somebody is gaming the system. Not our staff. I'm curious if bidders are gaming the system in order to say, well, this is a $20 million project, and if we come in and there's a 10% contingency and we can get an additional $2 million, then we'll just come in a little bit lower and just use up all of that contingency. That's gaming the system.
Well, I can tell you from being on the other side that yes, I mean, and Tom's laughing because it's part of it. You're looking for inconsistencies in an RFP to say, all right, I'm reading it this way, and I'm gonna propose B, even though I think they really need C. And it's like someone saying, I need to get from here to to the train on Main Street. And someone says, okay, transportation between here and Main Street. Well, am I taking a limo? Am I taking my own car? Am I taking a bike? Am I walking? What's the cheapest thing in order to me to get there? I'm going to say I'm going to walk, right? Or I'm going to have my staff walk because I'm being paid by the hour or whatever else. That happens every single day, but staff has been doing this a long time too. And it's not like we just wrote the RFP for the first time. So I think we've gotten good at this, and you can tell actually from what we've awarded and what we've done as the sample size here. I would say that your exercise has proven that we do a good job, and the contingencies are appropriate. If the idea is that if you want to see if we're getting if our staff is getting gamed, then it would show here. If the idea is for some way for us to look forward and say, okay, anything over $3.5 million, anything over a certain amount, that we would like at the end of the project a check mark whether or not we use the contingency. I mean, we don't have that many very large projects. That shouldn't be a big deal. But I think the idea behind a contingency is to provide flexibility for the project manager to get a project done. But at the same time be critical of what you're holding a client to it. You're not. I know when I work when I'm assigned a project, I work my budget not based on the contingency. I bake my budget there, and if I have scope creep, meaning that the client asks me to, hey, can you do this, A, B, or C, or D? I raise my hand and say, all right, you got to give me some more money, or this is not in the scope, or whatever else. But I guess I don't see we have to trust staff, and 10% is a number. If you're saying if 10% of, some, big number, whatever that threshold is for you, I guess the question would be to staff, how much time would that take to come back with, if things were over a certain amount?
Mayor, can I interrupt real quick for a second? Just to clarify, it's 10% or $100,000, the lesser of those two. So if you see these like a multi-million-dollar PO, it's capped at $100,000 is the change order amount. So we would have to come back to council for approval to exceed that. We don't just go with the 10%, it's 10 or 100,000.
Okay, I appreciate everybody jumping in and offering an opinion, but all I want is to know, did we use the contingency or not? What you're saying, Mr. Speaker, is all valid, but it's not relevant to my request.
I'm
Did
saying
we use?
I'll be very clear. I'll say your request is wasting time.
Do not interrupt me.
I can.
Please. I don't interrupt you.
Okay.
It's my turn. I just want to know, did we use the contingency or not? It's a box. Yes or no? The nuts and bolts of it are not relevant to the discussion. It's not that I don't trust staff. It's obvious that there are contractors out there that are gaming the system. It's just a metric for us to track that I don't think is difficult. I think this, based on the conversation that we had, got misconstrued. Yes or no? Contingency wasn't used. That's it. If that's too much of a request, then let me know. But it seems like we got into the weeds here, and this is not an into the weeds question. This is just yes or no. At the conclusion. And then at the end of the year, or at the end of the fiscal year, you could say, we used it 100 times out of 100, or whatever. And maybe in that process, somebody will get some information. It's just a metric. And I think it's important that we are tracking as many metrics as we can that are relevant. And if it gets to the point where every single time we're using into the contingency, then maybe there's something that we could look into that. But the contingency number is already set. We have that discussion on the front end. Just want to know if it got used or not. That's it. Is that what this sample is? Or is this sample something different that is causing some sort of internal angst because it's hard to track? Again, at the end of the project, yes or no?
This sample set, no, it's not at the end of the project. This is everything that's been approved by council since July 1st. Like I said, it's a sample size of that, but it's not just looking specifically at CIPs. It's looking at everything, operating, capital, all that kind of stuff that's been approved by council.
Okay, yeah, so again, at the end of the project, yes or no? Is there a way to add that to the closing out of a project? Did we use the contingency, yes or no?
I can definitely have a conversation with my staff and report back to the council at a committee of the whole or a study session to let you know what that process would look like
And
and
if
how
it
much time it would
becomes too
take.
difficult, then we'll reassess. But in my opinion, and again, I don't know, which is why I'm asking, just at the closeout, yes or no? That's it. And I don't want to confuse anybody, and I don't want anybody to conflate this wrong. It's just a yes or no.
Thank you. And if that's the will of the council, then we're happy to do whatever the direction is from council.
I just don't, I don't see the relevance. I see this as a waste of time.
Can I make a couple comments? So when you have a contract, you're obviously bidding it to win it. And then when you win the contract and a change order comes up, you never bid a change order to win it. You already know you've won it. So there's never a fair change order, period, no matter whoever it is. Looking at these numbers, you're running 0% contingencies on most of these projects. And then the one that's 25% was budgeted for 25%. So my alarms aren't going off on the contingency being abused. I think Tony does have a point on contingency because I see it in my field of work. And where contingencies come in is usually a manager or a project manager will say, oh yeah, go buy the Cadillac, we'll take it out of contingency, or buy lunch for everybody, we'll take it out of contingency. So there is the possibility of contingency being abused. But I don't see the abuse here. I would recommend that Kim has that conversation with their people, and then we just go forward from there.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to cause internal strife, I don't want to do that. But in my mind, I feel like it would be simple. But please report back to us and let us know if it's a simple thing. Again, did we use contingency or did we not? That's it. I don't need anything else. I don't need... No. When I originally asked for it, Jacob said it would be a nightmare to go backwards. So just trying to establish something moving forward where contingency used, yes or no? And because on to your point, Wes, anytime that there's a major change, it comes back to us, and we have to say yes or no. And it's front loaded with the percentage in the front end. Is it 10%? Is it 20%? And we ask questions. That's our job.
Right.
But at the end, all I'm wanting to know was, did we use it or not? That's it. I feel it's a very simple request, and you'll let us know in an updated meeting. Thank you. Moving on.
Okay.
Something less volatile, hopefully.
All right, thank you. Okay, so our next topic is we are actually requesting to relocate cooperative bidding from an exception to bid to the bidding procedures for informal and formal non-public projects. And this is a proposed change to the Corona Municipal Code. We are asking the City Council to provide feedback and direction on the relocation of cooperative competitive bidding by another government agency from an exception to bidding to the bidding procedures for informal and formal non-public projects. I know this is kind of a lengthy topic. I'm going to explain a little bit more. Hopefully it'll make more sense with some examples. But I just want to reiterate that this is strictly for non-public projects. We're not asking any changes for public projects. So I thought it would be a little bit helpful to briefly describe what we mean when we say it's a cooperative agreement or it's a cooperative procurement. So what is a cooperative procurement? It's a purchasing method combining the requirements of two or more public procurement entities to leverage the benefits of volume purchases, delivery and supply chain advantages, best practices, and reduction of administrative time and expenses. It helps us gain economies of scale that the city would not otherwise receive if we completed it on our own. So it's just kind of like a brief summary of what we mean when we say cooperatives. And like I said before, this is strictly for non-public projects. And I do have definitions in case you guys want me to share them with you, but they're a little bit lengthy. So I thought I would provide just like a visual of what a public project is versus a non-public project. So here we have an example of a public project with street paving rehabilitation. And again, this is an illustrative picture of a non-public project, and it's more like routine type of work. For example, maintenance, cutting of the grass. Okay, so now that we have explained, the differences between the public, non-public projects and what a definition of the cooperative agreements or cooperative procurement is, I just wanted to give you a visual of where currently under our Pure Municipal Code, where we actually have this exception to bid located at. And it reads exceptions to competitive bidding, non-public projects under CMC 3.08-140, letter C. And that little square is just the verbiage that comes with that letter C. And we're not changing anything, any verbiage. We're not adding anything. We're simply just relocating it where we think it belongs better. And this is what we're proposing. We're proposing this to be moved under the bidding procedures as a letter J. And this applies for formal and informal projects, but non-public projects. So it would read competitive bidding already completed for non-public projects, formal bidding procedures. And it would be CMC 3.8-110 under letter J. And again, for competitive bidding already completed for non-public projects, informal projects, it would read as 3.08-120, letter J. And just to kind of summarize, this is the pros and cons with this change. Just to kind of summarize the pros that we came up with, it is a competitive bidding completed by another public agency. We are simply relocating the cooperative procurement procedures from an exception to bid to where it properly belongs under letter J for both formal and informal non-public projects. It removes the public perception that a competitive procurement process was not utilized. Cooperatives leverage buying power across multiple agencies. It lowers the cost of procuring commonly used goods and services, and it reduces the administrative cost and provides access to more favorable terms and conditions. It simplifies and streamlines the competitive bidding process, and it's a timely access to materials, supplies, and equipment. Some of the cons we came up with is less community involvement and less public awareness. So our recommendation is to approve the relocation of cooperative bidding from exception to bid to bidding procedures for non-public projects. And I just wanted to reiterate that when purchasing does receive a request that references some type of cooperative agreement or some type of cooperative procurement, it's not a free-for-all. It doesn't mean that we're going to approve automatically. It does go through a review process, and the purchasing specialists are required to just verify that the co-op is good, it's active, it has favorable terms if it's something that was done competitively bid. So there's a checklist that we go through before we actually approve, as a peace of mind, something that is competitively bid by another government agency. Okay, and this is just a summary of the items that we're asking council's feedback on, that the city council provide feedback and direction on the council approved purchase orders reporting data. And item number 2 is that the city council provide feedback and direction on the proposed relocation of the cooperative bidding, competitive bidding.
Thank you. Before I open it up, I just want to make sure that I understand the process here. This is going to have to come back before the full council. Is that correct?
If we're making changes to the Corona Municipal Code, yes.
Okay, so, I mean, the three of us can't essentially, unless the three of us all agree that this is a terrible idea and we shouldn't move it forward to the entire council. But I myself would appreciate to have the entire council hear this item. I don't necessarily disagree with it. A couple things that stand out to me: when the con is less community involvement and less public awareness, those are probably the two biggest things that we would all be concerned with. So that's not a good thing, and I don't feel comfortable saying, yeah, that's great, less community involvement and less public awareness. That's the opposite of what we're trying to do. So I'm okay having the entire council hear this, but I'm not prepared to say this is a good idea today. So.
Thank you for the feedback. Are there any other pieces of feedback for us from council?
Thank you for this, by the way. It's one of these ones where I'm always perplexed depending on which hat I have on. I get that it's a shortcut, and I like shortcuts for the most part. And in order to get things done, I do find that I every single one of these that we've approved or has come in front of us, it always makes my hair stand on end a little bit, just because you win something, you compete in some agency, it could be hundreds of miles away or in a different state, and we just grab a hold of it and go, this will work for us, and if it's in our budget, and we go. But we're not allowing anybody local. We're not allowing there to be that public involvement or that community involvement or awareness part that we're allowing other people to bid. And I get there's some thresholds, and I know it's very nuanced, and I'll never understand all of it. It just my nightmare scenario in my head is that we award one of these based on some service that was, or there was 2 or 3 people that bid on a very, not a very sexy topic, or there weren't too many people that knew about it, and then this person happens to bid, and they win based on 2 other competitors that didn't know what they were doing, and I've been on the beneficiary of that on a government contract, where I actually bid the project not wanting to win it, and we won it because the other 2 people had no idea what they were doing. And it was a great contract for us, made a lot of money. But at the same side, I put my other hat on and go, okay, I worry about issues like that. Are we getting the best deal? Have there been changes in how that work is being done? And I understand that we have challenges right now, and I want to be okay with finding the shortcut, but I agree with the mayor that there's, I think we all want to weigh in on it and give some feedback, and making sure that there is some kind of either a threshold or a trigger that would, I guess the trigger could be us and we say no, but I don't think none of us want to, kill a project or kill a procurement, after you all work so hard on getting it to us. So, like I said, I'm torn on this one. It's not on the moving it, of course, but just the fact that we do it.
For those watching, I think everybody here knows that Jackie and Jim stepped out to go to a funeral. And so it's just the 3 of us for a little bit, and we'll probably screw that up. But I think it's important that those 2 weigh in. So maybe a committee of the whole meeting or future council meeting or future something. That's where I'm
I guess what we'd be looking for at this point is some direction, and obviously before any final decision's made, it would be heard by everyone on council, assuming someone's not missing that particular day. If you'd like us to not move forward at all, we can discontinue it. If you'd like us to proceed with bringing this back for the whole council to consider it, then we would welcome that direction too.
I think it's a good idea. I think Jackie and Jim need to hear it.
So that's fair. So if that direction at that point is bring it, you can proceed, but it needs to come back to the whole council before we finalize anything.
Yeah, I think that everybody needs to have the benefit of hearing it, and then I just would like some clarification. I mean, if there is any type of thresholds or securities put in place, because I think Councilmember speaking from experience has seen how this could go good and how this could go bad, and so if there's mitigating circumstances that we could put into place to make sure that this doesn't go bad, I'd like to know about that, and because this is essentially sidestepping the competitive process, right? And I get that it's because somebody else has done that competitive process, but do we agree with their work?
Yeah, we don't see it as sidestepping a competitive process. It's just a more efficient way of trying to piggyback off the work that someone else has done. The big picture context for this is that we know that purchasing is slowing down many things that we're doing in the city. And it's not because of staff. It's because the public procurement process is complicated and it's slow and it's laborious. And so the charge that we've heard from both the community and council is find a way to get the job done faster and better. And so these were some of the ideas that were generated, is take advantage of competitive bidding that's been done. If it's been fully vetted and someone's gotten a good price, why reinvent the wheel on that particular purchase? These are simply suggestions, and you're right, there are pros and cons to it. there always is going to be a trade-off. Efficiency versus thorough review is always a balancing act of how thorough do we want to be until we say this is a little too thorough and not very efficient. And sometimes we get to the point where we say, love the efficiency, it needs more review, and we appreciate the feedback on that. So they're good points.
Okay. That was the conclusion, right?
Yes.
It's clear as mud for everybody.
What I think I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is continue to proceed, but before any final decisions are made, make sure the whole council reviews this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Welcome indeed. It's not like this all the time, that's for sure. Okay, moving on to fiscal year revenue projections, and that is going to be brought to us by Julie Kennicott. I don't know how I was going to just butcher your last name, starting it with a J, but welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Are we ready for some numbers?
Between us and lunch, so no pressure.
And then I come back right after lunch with expenditures, so we're here all day. Thank you, sir. All right, let's see, we are up. Okay, we are going to talk about preliminary revenue estimates for next fiscal year. We will talk about general fund, special revenue funds, more specifically the funds related to roads, enterprise funds focused on utilities of water, sewer, and electric, and then the grand totals. Also, just a side note that you'll hear me mention throughout my presentations throughout today is that the estimates are subject to change throughout the budget process as new information becomes available. It shouldn't change dramatically, but before we bring the budget to you for adoption, things will change. So we will start off with the general fund. For next year, the total inflows, which is a combination of both revenue and transfers in, is estimated to be $213 million. That's an increase of $2.3 million or 1.1% when compared to the current fiscal year. I'm sure everybody's eye is drawn to that large bar graph for fiscal year 2022 actuals. That spike is due to the pension obligation bonds that we issued, and so this is going to skew our comparisons for a couple of more years until that falls off during the fiscal year 2027 budget process. Now we are taking a look at the 5 largest categories that are in the general fund. Those 5 are sales tax, property taxes, other taxes, current services, and other revenues, each of which we will go through the details a little bit later in the presentation. Sales tax is about 46.2% of general fund revenues, and property tax is about 28.8% of the general fund revenues. So just those two alone account for 75% of the general fund revenues. Now taking a look at sales tax, the estimate for next fiscal year is about $97.9 million, which is a decrease of just under $500,000 from the current fiscal year. Working with our sales tax consultant, HDL Companies, we do anticipate seeing a temporary flattening of the sales tax receipts in fiscal year 2024. Next up is property taxes. They are estimated to come in at $61 million next fiscal year. The 2 largest categories are secured property tax coming in at $35 million and vehicle license property tax coming in at $17.7 million. And again, property taxes represent about 28.8% of the general fund inflows. This slide is looking at some of the history in property taxes. You can see how it has grown year over year. The current fiscal year estimate is an increase of $4.2 million or 7.6% over the fiscal year 2022 actuals, and $3.8 million increase from the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. The current fiscal year delinquency rate was lowered from 5% to 3% now that the state of emergency has been canceled. And then the next year estimate is about a 2.4 increase as compared to the current fiscal year estimate. And again, that delinquency rate is at 3%, which now returns us to the pre-pandemic rate. The other taxes group includes transient occupancy tax, which is the hotel taxes, franchise fees from Southern California Edison, Waste Management, Southern California Gas Co., and the different cable companies, business license taxes, and then the newly approved cannabis tax. This is about 7% of the general fund inflows, and the total estimate is $14.7 million in the next fiscal year. Now we will take a look at the group of other revenues. This is $10.9 million estimate for next fiscal year, which equals about 5.2% of the general fund inflows. Most of this comes from different rents and leases, special district reimbursements, billboard revenues, PEG fees that we receive from cable companies, and some development agreements, and then also donations are in this category as well. Moving on to current services, this makes up about 5.6% of general fund inflows and is estimated at $11.7 million. We have fire, which is service agreements, EMS subscriptions and direct bills, hazardous material services, and then the paramedic program, among many others. Plan check fees are also in this category. And then for recreation, it'll include recreation programs like Kids Club, contract classes, facility rentals, and passport processing fees. And then for police, that includes agreements with the Corona Norco Unified School District, false alarms, and fees for the animal shelter.
Quick question
Absolutely.
on that. Go back to that slide. It's the inflows. What time is this? What time frame is this? What's the time frame for this 11.7 million?
This is for the whole next next fiscal year 2024.
Okay. So 2024, so, because I saw on the previous slide where it said that cannabis, the estimate was, if I got the colors right, was $200,000, but I'm only seeing 41,000 here.
So that's two different categories. This is going to be the cannabis tax that those storefront operations and the other types of operations of cannabis pay. Those are the taxes that we set for them to pay. And then this cannabis is for when they're going to planning and development to start that process.
Got it. All right. I just wanted to see the difference there. It threw me off.
Sure,
Thank you.
no problem.
Really quick, Ms. Kanika. On that previous slide, the general fund inflows, that $3 million, or that's just estimated, right? So that could, what did we use in order to kind of come up with that number?
So we've been working with planning and development. Right now, we only have one storefront that is open. They opened late last year, and they've been open throughout this fiscal year. However, it was first an operating fee, and it just changed that tax, although the percentages didn't change. And then throughout the next fiscal year, we worked with planning and development to see what phases the others are in, when they think the other ones will be able to open. So the $3 million is based on when they would be opening and any prorated rates.
Okay. I know that there's several that are opening up very soon because they have a specific date that they're trying to hit. And that actually, stays within this fiscal year. So they'll be open for an entire fiscal year. So we could see how good our math is on that.
Yes, sir.
What the over-under is.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so this is taking a look at the total general fund. On the left, under the blue header, it shows where we were at with the adopted budget and the current year estimates and what that change looks like. You can see it's a change of about $14.7 million, or 7.5%. Over on the right-hand side, it is showing the estimates for fiscal year 2024. It's about a 1.1 increase over the current year estimates. We're seeing some large increases in other taxes and property tax, and then some decreases in the current services of the revenue and investment earnings. Next, we are going to focus on the special revenue funds that are road-related. This will include the road maintenance and rehabilitation account, gas tax, and Measure A. The RMRA funds are collected from fuel cells at the pump when you're filling up your vehicles. You can see this has been consistent throughout the years since it began in 2018, averaging right about $3.3 million. For fiscal year 2024, we're seeing an increase of $477,000, or 13.9%, which brings us up to the $3.9 million. And these funds can only be used for capital projects related to roads.
I just have a question in here because you have 2020 through 2023, I'm sorry, 2022 actuals. Do you by any chance have the historical data on what the estimates were? Did we exceed the estimates? Or do we fall short of the estimates? So just kind of curious if there's a pattern there.
We can go back and double check and report that information out to you when we present on the proposed budget. But the RMRA fund in particular was a new one that started in 2018, so there's not a lot of history on this particular fund. But yeah, we can definitely.
Even easier to get the data then, yeah?
Right.
This is from gas tax and is similar to the RMRA fund and how it's collected. However, this one can be used on capital projects and some operating costs as well. The fiscal year 2024 estimate is $4.6 million, which is about 10.9% more than the current fiscal year. This last one is Measure A. It is a 0.5% sales tax that is collected in Riverside County and given to us by RCTC. You can see the fiscal year 2024 estimates are the same as they were in the current fiscal year, and these funds can be used for capital projects related to roads in the city. Next, we will discuss the utility funds. This is just a list of the funds under the water, sewer, and electric funds. This is showing a combination of all the water funds. We have water grants, water utility, reclaimed water, and water capacity. You can see the representation on the chart shows a decrease of $22.9 million or 24.4% compared to the current fiscal year estimates. This is largely because of a one-time settlement of $19.1 million that we have previously spoken about during the quarterly updates. Also, you can see there are no water grants budgeted in the next fiscal year, and that is because those are often one-time in nature and can't be budgeted for. And then just to note, the water capacity is based on development, so as building fluctuates in the city, the water capacity amount will increase or decrease. And then I would also like to note that the fiscal year 2023 and 2024 estimates are updated projections based on actuals. This is taking a look specifically at water utility, mainly the operations of the function. The estimate for next year is $62.7 million. Primarily, that comes from utility service charges. There are some other items that weigh in on this and are shown on the table to the left. And then these estimates are also updated projections based on actuals. So in fiscal year 2024, the forecasts are at a decrease of $15.5 million as compared to the current fiscal year. There is the one-time settlement that we just spoke about, which is contributing to the decrease. However, we do have some increases in other areas that are partially offsetting that amount. And as you can see, the rate study had forecasted revenues for fiscal year 24 to be at $67.6 million, but the updated projections based on actuals have it decreasing down to $62.7 million. The revenue shortfalls from the 2019 financial plan through fiscal year 22 actuals is trending at about 4.3% less than anticipated. Moving on to the sewer funds, these were formerly known as the water reclamation funds. These are estimated at $35.7 million, which is about $200,000 less than the current fiscal year estimate. And this is made up of sewer grants, sewer utility, and sewer capacity funds. Looking more specifically at the sewer utility, which is primarily the operations account, 94.6% of this fund is related to utility service charges, and similar to the water utility fund, there's also investment earnings, fines, penalties, and forfeitures, current services, and other revenues that contribute to this fund as well. Now taking a look at the electric utility fund, the estimate for fiscal year 2024 is $17.8 million, and that shows no increase or decrease over the current year estimates. Are there any questions on the utilities funds before we move on? Okay. Lastly, let's talk about the total of all funds. So rolling all of that information together, the estimate at the moment is $436.4 million. The breakdowns of the funds are shown on the pie chart on the right, and then as mentioned before, these numbers will change throughout the process as we work through the annual levy process and other small adjustments. Now we're taking a look at about how all of this relates, looking under the bright blue header at the adopted budget versus where we think we will end up at the end of the fiscal year. There is a $15 million increase, or 3.2% from the adopted budget to where we estimate we will end this current fiscal year. And then over on the right, the estimates for fiscal year 2024, that is showing a decrease of about 51 million, or 10.4%. And with that, I will be happy to field any questions, comments, or concerns.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Kennicott. Not only did you give a great presentation, but you somehow got us back on track. So at this point, we are going to take, I guess, a recess from now to, we will reconvene at 1:45 p.m. So 2 hours and 45 minutes. Thank you very much.
Through your eyes, look at how our galaxies collide.